rock and roll, rock and roll, rock and roll, rock and roll. Feels good to get some sun. Got that backpack. Special edition. Special going to the mountain for special 9/11, September 11th today anniversary. The 24 years since the tragic terrorist attacks, and I would say North America, you know, and free world, the Western world. It's been 24 years, and today I'm going to march to celebrate my own victories and to celebrate our victories together, and for securities and certain victories, certain losses, certain battles lost and fought, and you know, part anniversary, part tragedy, part that has been tremendous hope as well for today and for the future, which I have, and that of course today marks the 24th anniversary of the September 11th attacks, and I missed my deadline. I was supposed to do a big cleaning. I only did laundry and some cleaning my own place because I spent about 4 hours just listening to documentaries about the event 9/11, and was listening to something I never listened before. Some recordings from the flight operations when they called Flight 11 and Flight 77, Flight 93, Flight 175. There was 4 different planes that hit, of course, the North and the South Tower World Trade Centers, and of course one that crashed in Pennsylvania, Flight 93, and the other one, of course, that hit the Pentagon flight number 77. And of course Flight 11 and Flight 175, they had struck the North and the South Towers respectively. So marching towards the mountain, my second home, as a commemoration. Somebody lost the hat there. I like the gold and the red, and usually I wear something red, although the backpack is red, and got a little bit of red here, and my phone case is red, and I decided to wear all black. And always got to commence with my gratitude and kind of get out of the way, because fellow citizen with the carriage is coming, and gotta salute, of course, get out of the way and make it safer for my auntie and fellow citizen there to cross the street. And gotta salute the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the plumbers, the electricians, those in the daycares who change some diapers. And as I work myself on the compost project, I gotta salute those who's gonna pick up the compost in my neighborhood. This is the compost bins, and in 2019, I worked myself on the compost project a few months, like 4 months, and you know, I live with this neurological mental divergent condition called Asperger's, so employment has been more difficult to maintain and keep long term because of this neurodivergent condition called Asperger's, HFA, high functioning autism. And enough of a focus on some little flowers there, because you know, I love colorful flowers such as this, and embellishing especially those yellow ones there, embellishing, of course, the Publik is something which I hold dear to. So we're gonna fuse and gonna get that 10, the 50, and the 3 always for the 63. And now, of course, commemorating the anniversary of the tragic events of 9/11. 9/11, of course. Myself, and I'm starting the new 40-day rite today, because I ended it last night, the 40 days, and now we're going on a new 40 days. Starting today, September 11th, a new 40-day ride until the month of Scorpio. So we're going to run it until about the 23rd, 22nd of October. So that means that we're going to end it just when the month of Scorpion begins, and astrologically, and then we're going to hit it up. And I missed the deadline to propose again. I said the new deadline to propose is going to be the last one, because Aspies will have trouble with, you know, sometimes punctuality and deadlines and all these things. And a new deadline, I guess, is going to be 31st of October. 31st of October, Halloween day, if not on the day itself, by midnight. So once it switches on that 1st of November, so I guess Halloween will be something which I'm going to be present about, and the roundabout, propose again for the 3rd time, because I got 2 no's, and it's going to be special marriage, I guess, in my case, because I'm part of the androgynous, pansexual, part of the LGBTQ community. I've been in the open for years, and supposedly, according to my journals, on 9/11, September 11, 2001, I was finishing high school. And according to my journal, I was in physics class. Interestingly enough, I was physics class, and according to the documents which I have, because I graduated high school, I scored pretty well in physics. Gotta salute the public workers who pick up the garbage, the recycling, and let's see if there's anything in here. Is that a sandwich? Oh, perfect. Oh, thank you so much for these. This is cold, and this is exactly what I needed. I was thinking what I'm gonna eat when I come back, and this is exactly perfecto. So we're gonna bag them up. Good until, or I hope they're still good. It says so that's 3 days, but is that when they were packed, or is that best before date? It doesn't say. I guess even best before date, and now they're pretty cold, so I guess just to eat them up. And yeah, I'm grateful for these, and definitely gonna enjoy them after I come back from the mountain. And I got that there in the backpack, so grateful. I'm gonna disinfect my hands a bit, because I don't know, I touched the handle and there's microbes, bacteria, germs, and I got this little disinfectant. And this is a antiseptic hand sanitizer, and just because I touched the goods, I'm just gonna put a little bit of it's viscous, but it's effective, and I'm gonna clean the hands with it. It's gooey, but it works, because I'm gonna pass on these ones as well to just kill a bit of other germs. And got that viscosity. And let's go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and add a few seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's disinfectant for you. And super important to keep the hygienic protocols that were established during COVID. I know sometimes we tend to revert to old habits. Myself, although I have Asperger's, I have this ritual routine, but I incorporated strong public hygiene habits, and basically what I'm doing is I'm keeping the hygienic products that were established during COVID in all interactions. When I do, of course, it's something when I do, I just rock and roll, and I disinfect my hands, and I encourage all to do the same, to disinfect the hands. And because you touch, imagine the bacteria, I opened it with a hand. And personal hygiene in the public, we got added responsibilities to do, is an obligation. And now I'm going to turn my head left or right. I calculated the distance and the speed that I need to proceed, because I want to get a little bit of that beauty there. And this is what I wanted to go here, see? This is what I want to see. Thank you. Whoever did this, big loving. I just love it. Passing by here, public embellishment of the public, and this is just so gorgeous. In the public, you got some tomatoes, and just so beautiful here. Look at this. I just love it. I love bright colors, and this is a beauty. And like my smile, gonna smell a bit. Yeah, it has a scent. It's slightly scented, and I just love it as the sun hits. It's just, well, I got a thing for yellow flowers, but also colorful flowers, all sorts of flowers. I guess the bees love them, eh? You love it, eh? Big bees, 4 bees that I count 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I see them more roundabout, so this is the one I wanted to come. So turn your heads left and right before you cross the street, and that was the purpose why I crossed the street. And of course we're gonna pass by these flowers here. So for my brothers and sisters, of course, I'm calling for, the firefighters who were hurt and the victims to be established and to be given, let's go, public-private partnership, millionaires, billionaires. Make them so that they don't lack for nothing, Give them $1 million each to the families, close families, like husband, wives and husbands of the victims, wives and husband, children of the victims. I guess we can do that, eh? We can do that. What do you say? $1 million each, so that they don't have to struggle. They pay the mortgage if they have, they pay the food if they have, and they pay a little bit of whatever they have to be paid if they can. And it's sometimes just that money finance which needs to be regulated in a way. And of course, as I'm calling for our fusion of Canada and United States and the merger thereof, and the creation of 2 institutions complementary for the environment and for total SSD, security, service and defense, based on my protocols, initiatives and thereof, as it's 9/11. And if you hear the sirens, see my brothers and sisters, boys in blue there, they're passing with the police and the ambulance. do the 180, slow down your car, slow down your vehicle, don't press the accelerator, and do what I call the 180 citizen when you hear sirens. Turn 180 to your right, turn 180 to your left, turn 180 to your right, turn 180 to your left, turn 180 to your right, turn 180 to your left. Those are citizen protocols in these tough times. That is something which we have to do, and that is just something which we have, of course, to conquer mentally. And see somebody put up a new one. That's nice. If somebody wants to take that there. Oh, it's missing a pillow, and gonna pass by the workout training place here. See how many people are coming to work out. I always enjoy people to work out and train and exercise, and that is just something which we do now together on the dynamic, of course, to get it on the go. And that is just something what you have to do now, you know. It's something what I always love to see. I wonder how much it costs. I don't need my own, but I always happy to see people working out training. That is, of course, my therapy of choice, and that's always something fun. I wonder how much it costs. I'm gonna go, of course, to our own gymnasium now, to the mountain on the way, and come back. And I'm always good when I work out, train. I've been on my fitness journey, and of course I'm calling for the new protocols, because I just saw, you know, my brothers and sisters, boys in blues. I sing that rock and roll for our armed forces, and boys and girls in blue. I also call it sing that rock and roll for my brothers and sisters who take their second, third, fourth chances and do their criminal rehabilitation. You know, do the community hour work you gotta do. Change your ways, and, you know, we seek help if you need mental health. And financially I can't help, you know, I can't. And my condition is not a disease, and there's no, of course, medication for it. So I don't, look at that cutie. There's no medication for Asperger's. You cannot medicate Asperger's away. So Asperger's is a neurological mental divergent condition. It's not a mental illness, and it cannot be medicated. Depending on the Aspies, different individual sovereign citizens with Asperger's, which are, like myself, part of this tiny small community, need more support than others. I don't need much of support, and I've been diagnosed independently by several citizens and individuals, and of course I refused it since about 9 years ago, I've been told, and for years and years and years I didn't want to accept it, and I always said, you know, no, and I don't have Asperger's, I don't have autism, HFA, high functioning autism, but of course it is something which I have to do to acknowledge it. That, of course, I have to discuss it a bit, because it's part of who I am, and all my theories, much of my work come thereafter due to this paradoxically Asperger's which we have, of course, in the collective, and of course the community which we're part of. The community which we're part of. So being that we're part of this community, we're part of this community of autistics. We love, we lust. We have, of course, all the situations where we are involved. It's more difficult for us. Where we have more difficulty is, of course, in all the situations where we are more difficult is the social manners. So although it's called a disability, in certain cases, I always use that we are less able. Less able. Less able. Less able, but there's not necessarily a disability. In certain social manners, social situation, we're less able. So as I go now, ending a 40-day journey, beginning a new one, and meditating and being grateful, you know, because I got things to be grateful for. Although financially stressed, I gotta be grateful, thankful that my rent's paid and electricity bill's paid, and I got food, I got coffee, and I got some sun hitting my face now, which is always a pleasure, you know, to get a little bit of those vitamins in. And I go to my second home, the mountain. I'm gonna be joyous with that, and we're gonna take a different route. Sometimes you gotta just do different routes, although I have this ritual-like routine. So I'm calling, before I digress, I just call for, in our coming public-private partnership and the fusion of the 10, the 50, and the 3. My call is, of course, somebody wrote smile there upside down. I think so. Is that what it is? Slime? No, slime. SL slime, or upside down? I wonder what's being made with that. This particular building can be turned into housing, but of course it's the construction workers, and it got to be maintained, and it takes that arbeit, you know. Give it to me. I'll do some volunteering, you know. I can not just blah blah blah. It's not sufficient enough sometimes to just put in the philosophies and the words. It takes a lot of brains and muscle to us to have all the highways, all the electricity. All the civilization is a privilege. Construction workers, you know, building all the buildings, and even this pavement, you know, it's an example of the privilege of civilization, because somebody, of course, with brains and muscle and sweat build it, and money is that finance to enable to us to do so. In our coming Imperial of the 63, Democratic Republican Empire of the 63, we're gonna mass finance public works, mass finance the rehabilitation of the population, mass rehabilitation and refurbishment, of course, of the infrastructure as well. It's gonna take, of course, a lot of work to do, as of course I'm about work mostly, and on the side with that, all my philosophies, theories and protocols are generally for the North American collective civilizational complex, although a lot of the theories are extended, of course, for the NATO plateau, as now, of course, we endeavor to be on the side, of all what is happening in the world now, and tough times myself, just financial stress, but I survived, and I survived COVID in 2020. I survived COVID. When I had COVID, that was a really hardcore situation, having survived COVID, and that's where we're gonna go roundabout and go a little bit in the sun and a little bit out and take a little bit of zigzag, because if I go that way like that, I'm gonna take a little bit more sun. So yeah, I survived COVID. I survived being depressed and suicidal, and I don't know exactly where I was, actually, from memory, personal memory, because it was a long time ago. But in 9/11 in 2001, I was in finishing high school, and according to my, these are cuties, and according, of course, to my journals, I was in physics class, because my memory prior to 2014 spring, like February 2014, before 2014, I have problem remembering my life. It's like retrograde amnesia. It's like a blackout, I don't know if I was doing drugs, hard drugs, if I was beautiful flowers, if I was a junkie, due to of course all the stress because of autism. And so Asperger's, it's HFA, it's high functioning autism, so it's a brand of autism, although it's a level of autism, although it's not, it's different levels of autism, right? So Asperger's is mixed. Asperger's has fused with the autism spectrum. It's called a disorder, but according to the ABC, it is an evolutionary process. Now I have to revise and relook it again and make an evaluation, of course, of the documentary by the ABC Corporation, because of course ABC Corporation states that Asperger's, of course, is an evolutionary process. And of course, due to this evolutionary process, there is something, of course, which has to be indented, and of course the indented what we have is, of course, to be protrudent of all the civilizational aspects, where now in the 21st century we have all the full domain spectrum of more knowledge, understanding and wisdom as to what is Asperger's and what Asperger's is not. Meaning that, of course, it is not, of course, a disease. It is not a disease, and it is just something which we have, of course, to do, in that we have to work on the characteristics. I don't use the word symptoms, but it's, of course, the characteristics which we have, of course, to work on. I'm going to take a turn here. Just make sure I cross the street safely. You got to turn your heads left and right. Make sure, because you never know. Brakes malfunction. The citizen driver presses the accelerator instead of brake, and I pass here, because I love this garden, as you can see from other videos, and my auntie there, my great North American family, aunties and uncles here, because since I crossed Canada coast to coast, that's when I established the strongest with the core of my fellow Canadians and brothers and sisters in the USA, always for the 63. Always for the 63. Let our empire rise and be. And of course, it is a beautiful garden. It's just gorgeous. So that is just, of course, the fundamental aspects of our dynamics, where we are in the societal living to be here on the island of the Hog, that I'm marking the anniversary of, and dedicate this to just, I guess, the victims. Almost 3,000 people, citizens died, fellow brothers and sisters. But of course, always calling for their families to be well. well taken care of in our coming empire. We're gonna have our dragon army integrated with all security service apparatus based on my philosophies, the new 911 dragon, North American integrated total security service and defense legions for could be extended for not just Canada, United States join, but throughout the NATO complex in parallel to my DMAA, direct military assistance or action philosophy or theory, where we have to, that has to be put in the NATO platter. I'm gonna come to that in a few hours, I guess. In a few hours from that, it's gonna be that rock and roll video. And gotta salute the workers of the Publik who built this great spaces here. You know, the Publik's embellishments of the Publik. It takes brains and muscle. It takes brains and muscle, and that's what it takes with that. And of course, all the concomitantly availabilities of all our domain where we are now, in all the privileges of civilization which surrounds us, such as of course having running water, electricity, running water, is highways, pedestrian walks, and all this is really a privilege of civilization. Think about it, all the work underneath just to have clean water on the tap. That's decades and decades of brains and muscle put at work there, you know. Yeah, decades and decades, of course, of brains and water, or brains and muscle put at work just to have, you know, the tap water here, the showers and the electricity and these poles, you know, millions across the 63, if not tens of millions of different shapes, sizes and compositions, It's something which was my thesis back of 2023, called The Privilege of Civilization. That was my thesis back of 2023, you know, called The Privilege of Civilization. The Privilege of Civilization, of course, was my thesis. And of course, I always get a little bit of that rock and roll for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, all of those involved in the production, distribution of food, you know. Always got to get a little bit for them and see how they're doing and they're operating. Of course, you know, the majestic composition where we are now, you know, to get it on the go. And that is something which we have, of course, to be involved in. And as citizens, you know, the awareness of the privilege of civilization, right? So, as we commemorate, remember, and I guess celebrate some victories, because we haven't had major terrorist attacks, paradoxically perhaps, due to the much criticized increased surveillance and surveillance techniques. And it's a paradox that we kind of need it for security, you know, because there are people who, for X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D reasons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, they would want to harm us, and terrorism and such, you know, as I have, of course, done, of course, in the past, working complementary, of course, to terrorism, related with CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, and years ago with, I think around 2016 or so, with RCMP, and in relation to the Islamic State, 2015, 2016, in relation to the Islamic State, because I found myself in the newspaper, freely distributed community newspaper, there was an article which called at that time, it's still ongoing now, for citizens, people to pledge allegiance to the Islamic terrorist state, which had declared itself a caliphate around, you know, it's like summer 2014 to summer 2015 to 2016. Then the ISIL coalition against ISIL was organized and declared an attack by Obama-led administration in Syria, Iraq and Syria. So here in Montreal, there was an open hour. So this was a community newspaper which was freely distributed, and it had 4 pages. And it was around 2015, 2016 that I read it, and I had goosebumps. I said, oh my gosh, right here, it's calling for strikes against us in the open, in the newspaper, in the open, calling for people to pledge allegiance and strike here in Montreal, in Canada, here, coast to coast. So afterwards, it was taken off the shelves. At least for temporarily. So that and another national security matters, because of course I'm an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist philosopher. I gotta say, who has predicted what's happening now, I have proof. I predicted in a general manner a great war is gonna come, a great war. In other words, a World War III. So for the most part, that is what has been ongoing since around about I predicted it in October 2019. October 2019, my prediction was made and sealed, and that's when I predicted, of course, to be on the go with that. And here, also turn your head left or right. Although it's a one-way, they can always turn, and of course, the brakes malfunction. It's a possibility that the brakes give way and that the brakes, of course, don't function properly. So that is always something which, of course, has to be taken into account in the possibilities where we are endeavored to. Because in the public, we got added responsibilities, duties, and obligations. In the public, we got added responsibilities, duties, and obligations, which we don't have, you know. The children are happy running after themselves. I'm happy. They're happy playing, children playing. That gives me hope, you know. They're happy, joyous, secure, safe, running after each other, calling themselves names and smiling, and that's what's important. The children of the empire, you know, of the 63 and all who'd come to join us. First and foremost, you know, the children of the empire. First and foremost, the children of the empire, and we just gotta make sure, you know, that there's no shards. Usually, if I would be a parent, I'm not, but if I would be, I would check before to go to, so that there's no shards, you know. That's why if you go drinking or you have drinking, just put it in the trash. Don't leave it in the children's park, because sometimes people go and drink, you know, in the children's places, and that's just something which you have, of course, to keep in mind, and just to ensure that you have, of course, the space to play, you know, space to play. So that is what it is with that, and that's why we're gonna go back, of course, to the domain. And I wonder what has happened there. It looks like a water main broke. See at the corner there? I'm not sure. Last time there was some water, so we're gonna go check it out now. It's gonna be important, of course, for the public works. We're gonna check it out. I don't know if it is a water main that broke, you know. Maybe there's a water main that broke there. Maybe. Not sure. Because last time there was water. Here you can see it in the video. So it looks like there's some work being done. I always sing that rock and roll for us. See how we take for granted? This is, of course, a canal which underneath allows us to of course, drink potable water. And last time there was water gushing. You see it on the video. I think even last week, Friday, or what was it? A few days ago, maybe. I'm not exactly sure when it was, but something like that. So, of course, see, like here. And that was gushing. And there was a lot of gushing of that water there. So, we take for granted sometimes all the sewers, canals, structures underneath that enable us to have the water, the tap water, and the bath, you know, in the bathroom, and to just have sanitation, you know. Sanitation, it's a privilege of civilization, you know. I guess we're not fully conscious of it all the time, but so we're gonna just go a little bit in Asperger's and gonna discuss 9/11, and of course I'm calling, before I digress and neglect to mention that, of course, in the Imperial Democratic Republic of the 63, we're gonna have established for all our security services, you know, integrated citizen there to be, if something happens to them, to their closest ones, families, and, you know, husband, wives, and children, they should have at least $1 million UEs. Well, the equivalent of the US dollar, right? But it's gonna be in UEs. It's gonna be in UEs. And my brothers and sisters, I really need to go pee. Just out of nowhere. I have to go pee. The closest, I'm not gonna be able to hold it, so I have to go deep in the bushes somewhere in the corner. Yeah, I don't want to, but I see bushes there. Yeah, that's where I'm gonna go, right deep, so that I just can't hold it, you know. Just like it's gonna go all over me. It's been about 4 minutes. It got harder and harder, but I just can't. It's just cannot. I'm about to burst. Yeah, I can't. Here. Oh my goodness. No, I'm not gonna film this. Yeah. I just couldn't hold it. I just went deep there and I just couldn't hold it, you know, because if I would have went all over me. I know it's just water, but it's just, to have let it run drip, it would have dripped, so. Yeah, and the closest would have been way too far. I would not be able to hold it. I would have not been able to hold it. It would have been too far. So now just next stop, I guess I'm gonna have to just wash my hands atop the mountain, as we go. I don't have to wash my hands atop the mountain. So that is just something which we have in common, you know, all this privilege of civilization. And I went deep there. I looked left and right because there was nobody, and I was deep in the bushes, you know. So sometimes you gotta just, I had to. So now we're gonna discuss. Hey, that's nice. Isn't that nice? Now we're gonna discuss Asperger's a bit, and we're gonna come back to 9/11, and of course this march is dedicated to 9/11's victims. And please take care of their families, their children, their wives. Give them $1 million, billionaire class just for 9/11. You know, you made so much wealth. You know, civilization enabled also our system, our civilization also enabled billionaires and multi-millionaires. You know, to make that 44.9 million a year playing some basketball or some football or some soccer or some, of course, hockey. You know, a year, and not just athletes, but the owners of the NHL, NFL, NBA, MLB, and the coming of our empire, all who serve in security apparatus, also who service in the security apparatus, we have to be credited $1 million, and everything will have to be covered for them in case of something happens to them. And we're their ambulance drivers, and they're holding hands there. That's always good. Always gives me some hope on the way, and somebody making some of that good loving. And if you want to come do some loving with me, you gotta be of age. You can be black. You can be white, you could be a man, you could be a woman, you know. I drilled that gridiron. Dancing is my favorite sport. Queer, you know. And gotta ensure that freedom, secure that freedom. So I encourage you all to work out, train, exercise. And today I listened. Oh, flag spotted, you know. Whenever oh, there's double flags there. Whenever I spot the flag, I show mine up. I show mine up. See, double trouble flags there. Turn your head left and right. This is a one way, but still the brakes can malfunction. The citizen can press the accelerator instead of the brake, and we're gonna show a little bit of that double there. See? Yeah, you got double. What? There you go. I got that. I don't know when I don't remember having that. Most of my life prior to February 2014 comes from journals. So probably got this started up about 25 years ago maybe. I graduated high school here in Canada, and now I guess I haven't even left the island since 2017 when I went with my anonymous friend. When I crossed Canada coast to coast, you know, that was an event which made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, and celebrating 8 years. That's why I said also that I'm also paradoxically celebrating me coming out of depression and being suicidal 8 years ago. And as it's 9/11, and 9/11 in 2017, we were headed towards Halifax. We were headed towards Halifax. Yeah, we were headed there. Something I'd check those tickets, but we were on the train maybe, or we were already there. We were on our way to go to Halifax, Nova Scotia. And in August 2017, we went from Montreal to Vancouver. It took us about 3.5 days by bus. 3.5 days by bus. 3.5 days by bus. 3.5 days by bus. The cuties. 3.5 days by bus. Going, just to go from Montreal to Vancouver, British Columbia was 3.5 days by bus. I even have the tickets. So the total trip coming back and going was 7 days. Because it's going and then coming back. So 3.5 days going. In August 2017, I got something in my eye. Thought I was gonna, wow, like for 4 seconds, that was something really in my right eye. Then I looked in the sun, and kind of the sunlight kind of cleared whatever was in it. I guess sometimes it's a good disinfected sunlight. We gotta be balanced with the moon. God bless and Goddess kiss our empire. And yeah, 2017, I traversed Canada coast to coast with my anonymous friend. That event really changed my whole life. Before that, I was depressed and suicidal, you know. Before that, I was depressed and suicidal. You know, before that I was depressed, I was suicidal, and that's what got me out of being depressed and suicidal. And since about summer 2014 till about summer 2017, I guess for 3 years I was depressed, I was suicidal. That's why I said maybe I was a junkie prior to 2014. Maybe I was doing drugs. Maybe I was an alcoholic. Maybe I was a junkie. If I was a junkie for a few years, because I lived here on the island, I used to live in a small underground basement. It was a small basement, small, moldy, lots of mold, and I didn't even have a bathtub. It was like a tight, small prison cell. It wasn't really a prison cell because it was an underground basement, but still here on the island, not far, a few miles that way, northwest a bit. And of course it was moldy, and it was so small I didn't even have a kitchen. The kitchen was just a sink inside my room. Basically the kitchen and the room were in one room. I had only one room and a quarter of a bathroom. I didn't even have a bathtub. I'm grateful I have one now. I'm gonna bathe during the weekend because I wish I could afford a massage therapy session. I can't afford it at the moment, but you know, that's something which friends with benefits, I guess we can trade, exchange. Don't waste my time. I'm not going to waste yours. And friends with benefits only. Don't waste my time. I won't waste yours. And that's just something which we have, you know, to do. And to endeavor to be with that. And to endeavor to love. And love by action. But you got to be 18 plus, you know. You got to be 18 plus. You're black, you're white, you're a man, you're a woman. Play that androgynous queer Great Iron. But you got to be of age. I'm going to card you just like I card. People get carded to go buy the cigarettes and the booze and the liquor. I don't drink much, or when you go to a club, but I don't know. So sometimes memory comes back. So memory, of course, I have a good memory of the past 7, 8, 9, 10 years, 11 years. You're welcome. I also wanted to get out of the way so that they, you know, because I have a spacious, and that's what I gotta do with that, you know. That's all you gotta do, man. And you gotta get some of that love. Slow down. Do the 180. Left and right. Slow down your cars. You hear the ambulance. You hear the sirens. Slow down your cars. Do the 180. Slow down. Do the 180. LOV to the firefighters. Whenever we hear the firefighters, citizens should stop and sing the cadence. Dragon Empire. We love our firefighters. Hey, 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 hey. We love our firefighters. Hey, 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 hey. Get back home and get back safe. We love our firefighters. Cadence for the firefighters. Dragon Army freestyle mode. We love our firefighters, get back safe. We love our firefighters, get back home safe. We love our firefighters, get back home safe. Whenever we hear the firefighters, we should sing for them. Hey, get back home safe. Yeah, give them, if something happens to the firefighters, their family should be giving their children their wives $1 million, $1 million, $1 million. Stand out fast. Stand out fast. Let's go.
Can you go?
Yeah, cadence. We love our firefighters, get back home safe, cadence. Freestyle, use it across the 63. I guess it's that good English. Can be translated here. We got that French in La Belle Province, so we can spit it on them. Les pompiers, nos pompiers, qui rentrent chez eux, c'est sauf. Qui se rendent chez eux, c'est sain et sauf. Ben sain et sauf. Gotta get it on the drill and gotta get it on the go. pedestrian. Gotta get it on the go. You gotta make sure they stop. I love this garden here. This is a nice garden, you know, so we gotta get it on that rock and roll, you know, 24/7, you know, for the firefighters, plumbers, electricians, you know, the welders, firefighters. Do the 180 when you hear the sirens of an ambulance or a firefighter, of the police. You turn 180 to the left, 180 to the right, 180 to the left, 180 to the right. What's that? Not sure. 180 to the right, 180 to the right, 180 to the left. 180 to the left, 180 to the right, 180 to the right or left. That's what you do. Left or right. 180 to the left, 180 to the right. That's what you do. Left and right, 180. That's what you do. 180 to the left, 180 to the right, and that's what you do, you know. That's simple as that, and you make some good loving. If not, send them to me, you know. I can volunteer, you know, to do a little bit of that good massage for them. And that's how we got that rock and roll, and we're going in the sun now. Always feel good, you know, to get a little bit of that sun and get a little bit of that good proposal and get some of that good loving sunshines, sunsets every second. You know, there's beautiful flowers there. You just gotta see, I guess. For the seeing, you know, you just gotta rock and roll, and that's how we're gonna be. That's how we're gonna rock and roll, man. Till the end, till the end, till the end, till the end. So that is just something which we have, of course, to think about and, of course, meditate. Look at those beauties. Isn't that beautiful? You just gotta see, you know. Just gotta see with that, and that's just how we gotta get doing, you know. All the way, and all, of course, the propositions where we are, of course, you know, the love, kindness, loving kindness as firefighters, children are safe, and you know, we gotta have some justice, I guess, and don't worry about my financial stress. I paid my rent, paid my electricity bill, but if you are kind, willing to offer work, whatever, always open for business. Financially stressed, but grateful, thankful, you know, my rent's paid, electricity bill's paid, and that financial stress aside, you know, you got that financial stress, but sometimes you just gotta take it with you and just be grateful, because I paid my rent, paid my rent, paid my electricity bill. The only bill I got paid to pay left, still have to pay, is my phone bill, which I gotta pay by the end of the month, because if not, I'm gonna be added some surcharges and late fees. I already got $1.44 late fees. I don't want to pay to the corporation more than you have to, you know. Already they're good with their profits, you know. So that is just what we have to do, you know. You know, the collaborative aspects is something what we have, of course, to integrate, and to watch the car here, slow down with the car, and gotta left, right it, or it's a one way, you know. The brakes can potentially malfunction, and the electricity can snap, and the citizen can press the accelerator instead of the brake. So here we are, you know, always on that go, and always on the meditative side, and always a little bit of that good LOV, you know. I think with a tea and a coffee or club soda, and that is just something where we have, of course, to be in the system. See what happened here. I guess there's the demolition, maybe. Oh yeah, this is demolished, or something happened here, you know. Oh yeah, demolished for new structures, you know. I started 4 times, I guess, and I'm gonna discuss Asperger's and my rebirth, and I'm not totally resistant to change. I have my ritual routines, you know, especially since 2017. It's gonna be working out, training, exercising. Dancing is my favorite sport. Working out, training, exercising, and you know, I love dancing. Dancing is my favorite sport, and the priestess, and that's just something which we gotta do it, and that's just something where we gotta have it in, and here we gotta traverse one step to the left, one step to the right, and yeah, this was, I guess it was due. So now I got 14, 13, 12, 11 seconds, just enough, plenty of time, I guess, for me to traverse with it, and for me to juggle down, and I got 4 seconds and gotta get it for that to go and cross the street. I kind of like this. There's sunflowers right here. Oh, the bee love it. Where there's bees, there's honey. Where there's bees, there's honey. Where there's bees, there's honey, you know. Look at that, man. It's just working on that. The bees, eh? Honey must be somewhere now. It's fascinating, eh? The bees, how they just work and amongst the pollution. Think about it. All these cars are passing by and they're still there working. And with their tiny comparison, the body shape, you know. You see 1, 2, 3, and the body shapes, because they're small, right? And sometimes the big cars pass, right? The big cars pass, and you know, it's not. They're still working here in the midst of us, in the concrete urban jungle right here, man. The bees, eh? Tough ones, eh? Right in ancient Egypt, when I was in a past life, as a woman, as a man, as a man, as a woman, as a woman, as a man, as a man, as a woman, as a woman, as a man, as a woman, as a man. When I was in a past life, previous incarnations, you know, as a woman, as a man, as a man, as a woman, as a man, as a woman, woman as a man, man, woman, man. There they go. That's a couple. And I was cultivating honey. I was cultivating honey. So I was actually harvesting the honey and doing the process, of course, of the honey buns, and that's just something where we have, of course, to be, and that's just something where we have to be on that go, you know, and that's something what we got, you know. Yeah, that's what I like to see, people kissing and hugging, and that's something what we got, you know. Always love to see that. Yeah, always like to see that. You know, it makes me happy, you know. It makes me joyous to see couples and I guess caressing a bit in the public. I'd rather see that. I don't like violence, eh? I am somebody who doesn't like violence. I just don't like violence, man. I don't like violence. I'm sporty, I'm fit, I'm workout, train, exercise. I mean, for violence, I'm fit. And I wonder what's the point of this one here. You know, see, this is Aspiness one-on-one, the traits. So we Aspie sometimes focus on, I know it's a code bar. It's a code bar. But sometimes we Aspies focus on, what's this number Z and why is it 100,328? If I will have that money, I'll give half, which is 500,000 and 164. Right, it's 500,000, 164. That's half of that. Half of 100,328 is, see, the number here. Half of 100,328 is 500,164. And don't ask me how that number came into my mind. It just did. And how I calculated it, it just did. So these calculations, of course, sometimes pop up immediately, right? So I have no idea how exactly I was calculating that, but I did calculate it right away. And that is the answer, right? It's 500,164, half of 100,000. And I guess Aspies, not all Aspies are good at supercomputers, you know, like good at supercomputers and computer science and all that, you know. Not all Aspies are good at computer science. 20% only, you know, 20% only. 20%, but that's still a big proportion in comparison to the population because we're only officially diagnosed as 0.44%, so that means that nationality is double, so that means that it's 0.88%, although close to 1%. So that means, in fact, that 1% is still less, it's still a tiny small fraction of the population. But for me as an Aspies and many Aspies, these mathematics, generally the community, and myself included, we're above average. We're above average, but not all Aspies are super scientists and computer scientists and know how to hack, how to code, how computers are made, produced. 20%, but 20% of Aspies is still 1/5. Me, because my main special interests are geopolitics, sports, fitness. Dancing is my favorite sport, but I love gridiron, North American football, and I love other sports, hockey, women's and men hockey, but of course, and rock and roll. So those are my three main ones. So that's what I do most of the days. I work out, train, exercise, or I do geopolitical analysis, theorizing, consequently creating strategies or protocols such as the DMAA, direct military assistance in action, which is pertinent for NATO to complement it and to incorporate it as soon as possible within starting today. So whatever the situation is in the analysis of all the dynamics where we are today being September 11, Asperger's, you saw, and just the number, half of that, because I said I'm going to give half to my anonymous friend if I make half of that, just the number popped into my brain. So Asperger brain, I'm going to go a bit in Asperger's now. So we have our brain stations at the microscopic level, right? They're not visibly outside, so that's why I was able to calculate half of 100,328 immediately. And see that there? We got a flock, total SSD, security, service, and defense all across the 63 as we're going to unite Fuse Canada. We're going to have a total integrated public-private partnership for total security, total service, total defense across the SSD, across the 63. As you can see there, we're going to have monitoring, of course, those 4 little antennas. I guess those 4 little antennas, they're short for radio telecommunication, and those 4 parts, 1, 2, 3, 4, are adjacent on all sides with the camera, so you have the audio visual. So the audio visual is going to be the representative reference, of course, where we have to conclude across coast to coast, ocean to ocean, of course, for the 63, whence we're going to have total security, total service, total defense. And interestingly enough, here's where my new neighborhood begins as we move to our total police, security, service, and defense apparatus via the Draconomic protocols and my dream, the dancing goddess of the Dragon Kingdom. And fundamentally, for, of course, at the corner there, that's where my old neighborhood begins. Nothing that I will to go back to, but when I cross there, I'm in my own neighborhood, and I used to live down there, and my memory prior to February 2014 is a bit on that rah blackout, and have trouble remembering my life, but that's a long time ago. February 2014, so I have a good memory of the past 11 years, 9, 10, 11 years, but when you go back before February 2014, there's a blackout. I used to live not far from here, down there in a moldy basement. I didn't even have a bathtub. It's like a small prison cell. So I guess I served my time. I guess I served my time in many ways. I gotta say that. I guess I served my time, and time served, and conclusive, of course, for the time being served with that. And that's always the apparatus where we have, of course, to conclude and to be in all the civilizational complexes where we are endeavored to be and to live here as a concordiate. In the concordium, of course, for the future. Please be careful, don't leave shards or anything like that, because there could be people with children, and a little bit of sanitation. And in my empire, my kingdom, we're going to give our brothers and sisters choices. We're going to build, of course, mass sanitation. We're going to give choices. Those who will have the volition for rehabilitation, have the volition for rehabilitation. And of course, my brothers and sisters who have the will for rehabilitation, we're going to have to make that mass public-private partnership. And here I'm in my own neighborhood. Basically, it begins here. That's where my old neighborhood is, here. So going north, east, north, that's where my old neighborhood is. And that's where my new neighborhood is. And again, nothing that I will to go back to, but now my brain, of course, switches to the truckers, and whatever the truckers are transporting, it's always something good, which we got to manifest. And I don't know, all the goods, all the services across the 63, you got to do a meditation. And of course, meditate on all the trucks, all the truckers that are going east, west, north, south now, with bacon, cheese, eggs, milk. Imagine they're going north and the other ones are going south. So now the camera is pointing north, and the other camera now is pointing south. So that's towards the border, towards the US border. So across the 63 now, there is, of course, like this one carrying all goods, bacon, cheese, milk, lettuce, romaine lettuce, milk, cheese, all sorts of goods. And in a parallel life, I know everything to know about the cameras, webcams, supercomputers, satellites. And see, among this truck, hail the truckers, salute the truckers, LOV to the truckers. And how many trucks are going now across the North American Collective, going east, west, north, and south? So many things that I don't know how many truckers they're going, but I know that there are so many that are vital in carrying bread, butter, cheese, milk, lettuce, and all sorts of good, even my wafers, of course, that are carrying, and of course carrying all those goods for us to feed ourselves. And of course, if we make a calculation, I guess it's going to be an ASPE calculation. The Asperger calculation, which is now going to be endeavored to be protruding to all me going towards the sun, is going to be a bit ASPE-esque. But there's a definite number of trucks going now, east, west, north, south, right? So there's a definite number of trucks going east, going west, going north, going south, east, west, north, south, roundabout. as I enter my own neighborhood. It's not that I will to go back to anything. It's just, of course, that I am right here, and of course that is the appellation where we are right here. That is, of course, just to pass through on the side like that, and that is something where we have, of course, to be on that go, rock and roll 24/7 for the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the plumbers, the electricians, and all the bakers, and all those involved in the production, distribution of food, and all those, of course, who are now endeavor to be on that go for the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, and the doctors, and all the plumbers, and all those bakers, and all the nurses, and all, of course, all who are now energetically involved in the transportation of goods. That is something which we have, of course, to be in the appellation that myself, like I say, I am sometimes useless with all my mind, with all my brain, financially stressed. I'm also useless in certain things. I'm also not so valuable. I contribute, but philosophically, intellectually, I guess I did create a workout training program system, and I contribute artistically by creating rock and roll, right? Creating rock and roll, right? For the truckers. But fundamentally, the truckers, the bakers, the butchers, the nurses, the doctors, firefighters, cleaning workers, dock workers, train conductors, those daycare workers changing some diapers, is, of course, to our logistic, to our civilizational complex. The truckers are so vital, along with the train conductors, because we transport cargo also by the air. Cargo, the romaine lettuce, bacon, cheese, milk, bread is being transported now in tons and tons of tons, and definite number that exists now. Let's say every hour, if we are to, of course, have via my vision the total citizen integration for citizens to be aware and have, of course, access to this information, and webcams across all our train stations, and web access across all our highways, and information, real-in-time information to see what's transporting what to be public, is, of course, the total citizen integrated, the CIT, citizen integrated integration theory. This is my CIT, which is parallel, of course, to the new 911 Draconis total security service and defense protocols, which I discussed in the past years and will discuss today, with all our theories in parallel as we mark 24 years since the 9/11 attacks. The 9/11 attacks, that is something which I have to be, and I have, of course, to see myself in all the positions where we are now, with the sun shining, and of course being able, of course, to quantify a little bit of that sunlight, and saluting the truckers across the 63. There's X, Y, Z, W, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3 amount. 1, 2, 3 amount. You got your own. 1, 2, 3 amount of goods that are being transported on first. That are going transported now. And there's a definite number in not quality, because that cannot be really too much assessed. It varies, but quantity. So it could be 156 tons of bacon, 1,000 tons of potatoes, the gallons or liters, 1,358 tons, gallons of tons of, we can say tons, or million gallons of milk, because milk has to be volume in liters, right? Not kilos and pounds mostly, but. And then we could say there's 718 pounds of romaine lettuce, and then there's bread. We can separate it into different quantities, and there we could say there's, of course, 333 or 156 tons of bread, or kilos of bread. It's kilos and tons, most likely, across all the 63, the 10 provinces, 50 states and 3 territories. 10 provinces, 50 states and 3 territories. 10 provinces, 50 states and 3 territories. That's, of course, something where we have, of course, to appellate, of course, in the conjugal aspect of where we are today now, and all the affirmations where we are. To live as a whole community integrated with all the meditational aspects which we have to endeavor to do, as I am doing now, but it's not, of course, a requirement. It's just, I guess, myself, due to my Asperger's, being that when I walk, I kind of also discuss this aspiness, the aspy brains and its differences, its differences, its divergence, parallel, of course, vis-a-vis the neurotypicals, and how sometimes my brain just either gets those mathematical responses, and I love fractions, but this love is aspy love. We love love, maybe a bit different type of love. There's loves and loves and loves, but now listen, I'm just gonna go 4 steps to the right and then 4 steps to the left, because that's, of course, those are the steps which, of course, have to be implemented in all the plateau where we're the civilization. The civilizational plateau. The civilizational plateau, you know? The civilizational plateau where we are, I guess. Sometimes you gotta laugh at yourself, you know, to be on that go with that, and that's something where we have to be doing like that, to be actually do, of course, that good round of meditations, and which includes mathematics, you know, which includes mathematics. So this inclusion of that mathematics, which includes that mathematics, and that includes the mathematics, you know, and that red and white goes hand in hand together, and you know, that's a beautiful color there, and we appreciate art, we appreciate beauty, and but I'm an individual Aspie. I'm part of this tiny community, and some express their Aspiness different, but you can see how the brain difference, it's marked. And of course, me doing that assessment also has to be the valuation that it's integral to geopolitical studies. Geopolitical affairs, of course, the transit, the transport, the business, and of course the highways, the security is, of course, super important in the collective North American civilizational case. So, of course, of our whole collective civilizational complex. So basically, in other words, what I'm assessing or doing an estimate is that those goods now being transported by the trucks, whether they're coming from Mexico or going from here to Mexico, it's mostly by trucks that's being done, right? So the truckers transport all of the goods, and it's a constant, right? It's basically 24/7. So just this here, it's a metropolis. Keep in mind that Montreal is a big metropolis, 2.5 million people, 4.5 million people with the north and the south, and the metropolitan area. The whole metropolitan Montreal complex, the metropolitan area is 4.5 million, right? So you have to also keep that in mind. On the island itself, because we're surrounded by that big river, it's 2.5 million or around 2.2 million. But with the whole, it's 4.5 million. So it's the second most populated city, metropolis. It's not really, it's a big city, it's a big metropolis island. It was first in Canada for many, many years, and it's still top 7 in North America. Even when one includes Mexico cities in North America, Mexico City is number 1, right? Mexico City is number 1. Mexico City, in Mexico, is the capital of Mexico. Mexico City is the capital of Mexico, is number 1, is the most populated. I think in the world is Guangzhou, maybe now is Tokyo, back it's Tokyo, it's on and off, Tokyo and Mexico, and then the new city in China, a mega metropolis, supposedly it's got like close to 50 million, when included the whole metropolitan area. It's Qinggong, it has a long name, like 9 letters or 10 letters, maybe 11, Qinggong something. It's not that well known. It's not like Shanghai or Beijing, but supposedly that one is more populated now. But Tokyo is populated, Jakarta as well, many cities. But in North America and Canada is the second. It was the first for many, many years, decades, hundreds of years. Montreal was most populated until about 2007, 2010, 2012, 2015-ish. Toronto became number 1 around that time. So only in the 21st century, Toronto overtook Montreal. In the 21st century, Toronto became the most populated. In the 20th century, 19th, 18th, 17th, Montreal was the first. Right? Nice house, I like that. How it's done. And of course, the other complex is that was the highway for just that segment of Montreal. That just one part, but the whole city. And then when we zoom and go coast to coast, ocean to ocean, and figure out that pretty much, okay, it's less traffic, but I'm speaking specifically of trucking. Trucks with goods such as bacon, cheese, milk, butter, romaine lettuce, wafers, etc., all sorts of edible goods that we consume for eating. It could be bananas, tomatoes, potatoes, cherries, oranges, and of course my favorite, grapes, or it could be avocados, fruits and vegetables, legumes, and prepared meals, big corporation, big, could be sauces and all the things we buy to eat, edible consumer goods. But it could also be, of course, jackets and shoes, and yeah, it could be also that. But I'm just making a specific towards food items for food security, just because yeah, it could be underwear, it could be appliances, yeah. Although that, yeah, there is that truth. It could be that it doesn't carry only appliances, a truck. It doesn't have to be necessarily food, right? But majority is food, because that's, we consume that, you know, and then we consume food the most in terms of money. Like what we spend, we don't buy a new TV every day, right? Every week. But we might buy bread every week, milk every week, right? Cheese every week, and you could buy tomatoes every week, potatoes, meat, beef, you know. So those edible goods. So there's a definite number in tons, kilos, gallons for liquids, gallons or liters for liquids. Right, so that is where it is the fundamentality of it, fundamental aspects of the quantification thereof, basically quantifying them, you know. It's quantification in and via discernment. Alright, so if we are to assess what's the most on the market, well, you probably spend most money on things such as bread, bacon, cheese, milk, and such, right? Probably the most common ones. If not the most common, is still bread, right? Probably the most common one is still bread and some fruits, bread, cheese, whatever the case may be, of course. Cheese, bread, and milk, whatever the case may be, you know. So that, of course, has to be taken into consideration in all the appellations where we are to be doing considerably. So let's say across the 63, if we are to include Mexico, that's added, but let's say just across Canada, United States, right? At this moment in time, there's XYZ amount of bread, cheese, romaine lettuce, butter, and let's say bacon in kilos, tons, right? That's circulating east, west, north, south. Within the next hour, it will reach its destination. It will reach its destination, so it's taken off the highways. It's no longer circulating in the highway system. So the system which I envision, of course, to be the citizen integration, to have across the 63 places, or from your own home and from city halls, to have telescreens and mass centers where we have these screens where we have 24/7 surveillance and see what's needed to do some volunteering surveillance of all the goods, of all the highways, the railways, the cities, you know, where public works is done, so that we integrate the citizenry and fight this alienation by this mass public-private partnership. Fight this sense of alienation, and for the North American collective rejuvenation, you know, and this finance, fitness, finance, all the other projects and the building of the 444, which I'm gonna get to. But first, I just want to finish with 5 minutes on Asperger's. So, just finish on Asperger's. Is where we have to commence, begin, start, and end. It's not a disease. It's not a disease, right? It's not a disease. Oh, look at those gorgeous, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful ones. So cute. I love them. Oh, yeah, those are nice flowers, nice flower pot. There just brightens my whole smile. And this march, dancing, rock and roll, meditative, geopolitical session commemorating 9/11 is much easier because of those flowers. So appreciate it myself. So back to what I was saying, the Concordiate, that's what it is with that, and that's how we gotta get on those things, and that's how we gotta do the meditation, which is more in depth, you know, to analyze for all those who are on the left, on the right, in the middle, in the center, and of course, this dynamic resolution. And back to Asperger's is not a disease. It's not a disease. It's not a disease. You cannot medicate Asperger's. You cannot medicate Asperger's. What did I step on? Oh, okay. There's the grill cut. I thought it was on the grill there. So you cannot medicate Asperger's. It's not a disease. It is a neurological mental divergent condition. Makes one predisposed to these weird social odd characteristics, not symptoms. Characteristics, not symptoms. They're not symptoms, right? Aspies, we don't have symptoms. We have characteristics and traits, and these traits make us, of course, partially weird, awkward, bizarre, sometimes strange in the conduct of our interplay of communication and understanding of non-written social rules. Spot the flag. Whenever I spot the flag, I show mine because I got it 24/7 again. Since I have trouble remembering my life prior to February 2014, and what I know before that is from the journals. I graduated high school, and when I was born, I got to find that birth certificate, and I moved from that place. And I remember, I guess last time I left the island was 2017. The island of Montreal. I stayed here for many years. 2017, it is the last time that I, of course, was on the island, and gotta get doing with that. Rock and roll, beautiful house here. I wish I could get my anonymous friend a house. And construction workers, they're gonna build the four, and they built all this, mortgages aside, and that's the rock and roll with that. So of course the side of all the plateaus where we are involved now to be in the resolutions, and of course the resolutions where we are now to rediscuss Asperger's, and of course and I remember in about, I think it was March or April, after I can go remember, I went to see a movie on the South Shore, and supposedly from the documents I have, I lived in Greenfield Park, who has an interest in Latin motto, the Latin. I lived in Greenfield Park, supposedly, I don't have a birth certificate, so I could have been born here on the island. I could have been born in, of course, city of the pyramids, Cairo, the pyramids are. Could have been born in Lugos, Transylvania. Could have been born in, I guess, Haifa, Israel. I could have been born in Washington, D.C. Sometimes memory comes back. Look at that beautiful. Whatever. I just remember I was attacked by surprise. That's so gorgeous. That just looks like Neapolitan ice cream. I love it. 9 out of 10. So I remember I was attacked by surprise. I missed the deadline. I guess Aspies, we miss a lot of deadlines, but I'm gonna go September, October. By Halloween, I'm gonna go at this next 40-day ride journey. I'm gonna go to retrieve the archives. I was attacked viciously by surprise. I survived a vicious surprise attack years and years ago. I fell, hit my head on the concrete. I was hit in the head a few times in the Montreal metro, and was bloodied up. Had a dislocated right arm, right shoulder, and went to the Jewish General Hospital. It was cracked back. My right shoulder, right arm was cracked back, and I was put on some meds. I was put on some medication, and that medication, of course, was probably for the pain. And I don't know exactly when was that, but I know I changed kind of 4 times. I almost died back then. I guess they tried to take me out and they couldn't do it. And COVID tried to take me out and they couldn't do it. And my depression tried to take me out and couldn't do it. My rock bottomness and I guess isolation, aspiness tried to take me out and they couldn't do it. I guess my freighter is going to be the one at the end. My freighter is going to be the one at the end, I guess. My freighter is going to be the one at the end. My frater is going to be the one at the end who's going to do it. Till the end, Perdurabo, bury me with Papa Crowley, thread me up in New Jersey, thread me up in the city of the pyramids, the third of me. Rotate every 11 years from Mount Royal after I die. From Mount Royal after 11 years. Rotate me, get me to the city of the pyramids. And of course, after get to the city of the pyramids, get me of course to Hampton, New Jersey. And after Hampton, New Jersey, give me back. I'll rotate from that to these 4 spaces as we gonna go endeavor to be on that rock and roll always. For the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, electricians and plumbers and all those bakers now getting on that go. And that's something what we have to do together. So back to of course Asperger's is something of course what we got to get of course on that side of the things, and you get a little bit of that playing some basketball there, always good to play a little bit of sports for the youth and elderly. I think it's can't see, I see it blurred. I was prescribed some glasses, so I can't really see who's playing or what age because it's kind of blurred for me. I can't afford to get glasses at the moment. Forget it. Even though the government gonna cover half, I still gotta pay 120, and I'm so financially stressed. That's my only stress right now, that glasses are something which I'm not gonna be able to of course get for now, for the time being. Maybe again in the future, but I don't know. I can live without glasses and just walking down the side, and that's just something what we got to do together, and all the side where we are of course now to getting on that plurality of the evolutionary processes which endeavor us to be concomitantly of course to get on that goal. So back to Asperger's. So it's a neurological mental divergent condition. It makes of course one predisposed to those special interests. And I gotta drop some garbage here before I drop some garbage. It's important to drop the garbage in the garbage or the recycling in the recycling. I notice a lot of things shouldn't go in the garbage. It should be recycled and vice versa. So we have to do it our part. If we don't do our part, then it's not that good, So please be careful with that. Sometimes I notice a lot of places there's what should be in the garbage goes in the recycling, and what's going in the recycling should go in the garbage, and vice versa. So, a bit of prudence, please, silver play, just a little bit of prudence, a little bit of caution, a little bit of excelsior, That's it on that. So, Asperger's is a neurological mental divergent condition. It makes me predisposed to special interests, and those special interests are that I have to go to the washroom again. Is that red? Yeah. Oh yeah. Can I join? Oh, this is much better. This should be available more in places. Oh, it's so clean also. It's good because I have to do number 2. Just have, it's clean, perfect. So see you later in a bit. Yeah, it's all red. Very clean. Keep it clean. Keep it clean, keep it clean, keep it clean. And oh yeah, that was good. Sunny back. Because I had to do the cycle number 2. I had to do the cycle as you go. Number 2 was the cycle numero uno. Gotta go it on the go. Gotta go for the butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, firefighters, plumbers. And I saw that red. I said I'm gonna take that available, and because it's a long march to the mountain. So now I can go by, and that's what we're gonna do, and gonna get on that going, and that's what we're gonna get doing on that. And we're gonna of course appellate, of course, all the civilizational structures what we have and what we do now, to get it on the go, and the foundations, to get it for the left and the right, and finalize, I guess, on that Asperger's. Yeah, it's not a disease. That's where we have to draw the line and make sure people understand it is a neurological mental divergent condition. And yes, Aspies like myself, we can be odd, strange, bizarre, awkward, but we can also love gardens and appreciate the aesthetics, some mathematical proportion, 1, 2, 3, 4 rocks, equidistant, maybe not, But see, I see a bit of mathematics when I look at that garden. You might not see any mathematics whatsoever, but I can go and discuss maybe for a few an hour there about the mathematics of that garden in terms of geometry, maybe distance and proportion of the flowers and the colors vis-a-vis the ratios and the percentages. We're different. We can be, and again, only 20% of Aspies are good, above average at computer science. I'm good at geopolitics, rock and roll, and sports and fitness. Dancing is my favorite sport. And I'm androgynous, pansexual as well, part of the LGBTQ community. So it's not a disease, it's a neurological mental divergent condition where we have to draw the line as individual Aspies or as a community is when Aspies are labeled or characterized as evil, bad, negative, or malicious, That's where we have to categorically reject that, because we're not that. Although sometimes we're direct, we can be seemingly direct. We can seem to offend, because sometimes, we can be pretty straightforward and direct. We can be pretty straightforward and direct sometimes, and sometimes we just repeat things. We have repetition of phrases, words, and echolalia. And masking, artistic for Aspies also, it could be a masking that we tend to mask to fit in, because social isolation, and we have certain problems because of our brains are different. So this brain difference makes us, of course, that we have now. I wonder how come there's some food advertising on the. I wonder how good it is. There's some food advertising on the buses, if you notice. There's some food advertised on the buses. Nothing against, I love that garden there. So nice. These gardens are nice. They rock and roll, so I got 8 seconds, 7 seconds. If you hear lights again, but that garden there in the corner is just so luscious, Just so luscious, and you can see a little bit of that. 1, 2, 3, 4 there. You can see how we ascend now. We're up the mountain. Now we're on West Mount, one of the 3 peaks of the mountain, one of the 3 peaks of the mountain, and you can see the horizon there. So now we're already ascended on one of the 3 peaks of the mountain system called Mount Royal, West Mount, Outramount, Mount Royal, the Trinity, and here we are. We got a little bit of flowers here, but nice gardens with colorful flowers that I love. And whenever I pass by this building, how it is constructed, go construction workers go, I always say my will, of course, to build a 4. We're gonna finish on Asperger's, and we're gonna discuss the 4 buildings which I will to build. Flag spotted, show mine off. So Asperger's is not a disease. We are not evil, bad, negative, or malicious. We have certain traits which of course can cause certain problems, and such as personal space. Aspies, generally we tend to breach it. I always have to work on it, and I gotta thank my anonymous friend who gifted me 2 books on autism generally. One, of course, which includes chapters on Asperger's, and of course another one which includes, one was rented 4 times, One was rented 4 times, one was rented 4 times as a library loan, and of course that library loan was of course rented for me, yours truly, 4 times, and of course I learned a lot about my own vulnerabilities. Of course the own vulnerabilities, of course, are these vulnerabilities in the social sphere, because we might not understand, for example, people's intention necessarily. So I had opened my own eyes by that book. Oh, see, this one I point a lot. This is a big pothole there that needs to be repaired. Wow. Imagine a motorcycle going on that. If it goes on that next one, yeah, you're gonna have to watch that. Wow. See, in my past video yesterday, the day before, the day before, that was how I mentioned that it has to be fixed, It has, of course, to be fixed, and of course that fixing, you saw that wheel, how it go. Sometimes it's gonna get stuck in there. Sometimes it's gonna get stuck, If it gets stuck, then that's it, I guess. You can get stuck right there. Anyways, for the motorcycle is best, is not that great. I guess for bigger wheels, I meant it's best. The bigger the car, the bigger the wheel. I guess the less impact. But the smaller the car is, the more impact, right? Mathematically, the bigger the wheel. If it's thicker, wider, then the smaller, like this one. So this one is smaller. That one will have more trouble than the other ones, than those ones, right? So the smaller the width, the size of the wheel, because if it's bigger, it can balance on the sides, right? So the smaller the wheel it is, especially this if it's a motorcycle, that's just mathematically so because of the width and the length. That is, of course, the house which I wish to give my anonymous friend, or one by the river, preferably, one by the river, which would be, of course, inclementary to give in the inclementations. So we're not bad, we're not negative, we're not evil. We can be bizarre, awkward, and strange, but we're not malicious. So we have these peculiar traits, and we have these routines, routines ritual-like routines which preoccupy our days, our daily activities. And our daily activities are usually revolved around those routines, which usually revolve around studying or learning or working or being engaged in our special interest, also known as obsessive interest. But I don't use the word obsessive because that's more for a neurotypical. Because myself, when I do, and I am involved in geopolitical studies, geopolitical analysis with intensity, super focus, super concentration, and I lose myself in it. It's a natural thing for me. It's not really an obsession. It's where many aspects, including myself, we find purpose, we find joy even. And, sometimes I just spend hours and hours and hours looking at the news from Montreal, from Canada, from United States mostly, Canada, United States, North American news mostly. 2/3, but then of course the other percentages, a big percentage of 1/3 is a good proportion, more than 30%. I go to see Mexican news from China, news from Israel, news from the Middle East. Beyond world is one news from India, which is kind of international, global in scope. So I do enlarge because my special interest is geopolitics, and I am an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, philosopher, and strategist, and that's pretty much what I do on the daily, and you have to enlarge because it's a global affair, it's a world affair, it's an international affair. So that international affair, of course, is the proposition where, of course, they have to get in global, international scope, because geopolitics is, international and global. Geopolitics is a global affair. It's not a local affair. You can have local events, local issues that are geopolitical in nature, such as, of course, that's another big one there, see? Such as, of course, the French Canadians here, the issue of the French language here and the potential referendum, because many people would vote yes. If there would be a referendum here, there's a lot of people that would actually vote yes. So this is a geopolitical, of course, event or relation, or, of course, geopolitical issue of concern that is for North American collective civilizational complex, for the North American civilizational complex, Quebec. So Quebec, of course, inside the North American civilizational complex, the geopolitical question is the French language, and of course I always say that we have made the great linguistic compromise of the French language to continue to have peace in the North American collective. Right, because here we made the great linguistic compromise, the promotion, etc., of bilingual, what we call bilingualism, right? So that is something which is, of course, pertinent for us North Americans, among others being that we are so diverse, right? 13.4% of my brothers and sisters of the North American collective are blacks. My black brothers and sisters, including my neighbors, Sometimes we have these subconscious elements. And, I was watching the parade. I have to watch it again, the parade, China's parade, which declared itself to the world as a superpower and is ending the hegemony, as you can see, the massive parade. I was looking at tens of thousands of soldiers, men and women. Not even one man or woman were black. Not even one man or woman. I mean, in my army, Draconis, we're going to have for the NORAD, NATO, North American 63 complex of the Imperial Republic of the 63, I certainly want to have blacks and whites and rainbows and all in between diversity of my army, because some of my dragons are black, some of my dragons are white, none of my dragons are born a dragon. So You know, you're not born a dragon, you become one, just like myself. That is the motto of the Dragon Army, which is a philosophy inclusive to all my suffering, struggle, pain, and all our embracing of each other here as a new collective, civilizational collective, an emergent civilizational collective, which is not divorced, but is distinct from Western civilization, So that is another big pothole, which we got a lot of work across North America, across the 63, to do a lot of fixing, including gazing at these beauties right here. Aren't they just so beautiful, with pink and white, white and pink, just quadrupling my smile as I go on these toes. So finishing on Asperger's, it is not a disease. It's not NOT in the negative. It's not a disease. It's a neurological mental divergent condition, right? There's no medication. We have three main problems which affect us, constituting because of our difference. We have problems making or keeping friends, right? Keeping friends, right? Keeping friends. So keeping friends is a problem. Keeping friends is a problem, right? Keeping friends is a problem. So of course, keeping friends is a big problem. And of course, from now on, I got the solution, because we focus with those as solutions. And of course, the solutions is of course something which of course we have of course to get it on the go, and we get it on the go as we go now, of course, where we are to get appellate in all the domain where we have of course to be now into the situational awareness of the Crowleyism bounce off of me like the dust off the pyramids, you know, and that's just how it is like that, and that's how it is on the XYZ for the go in this situational awareness. So the proposition is, and the constituency is, or the resolution, or the final, the truth, the reality of Asperger's is that we don't know the causes. It could be hereditary, biological, right? Hereditary causes or environmental causes, so it's inconclusive. And there's certain therapy which can be for certain aspects, but of course it's not necessarily a therapy that we can do together, but of course there could be a certain therapy where we could do of course on the go with the civilizational complex to go, or the situational awareness where we are now. So of course that is the size, of course, and the question of the intensity of these special interests which aspies have, and they can impede with our quote unquote the other things, right? And social nature, socializing can be difficult sometimes, more or less depending. I'm an individual sovereign aspie, and depends on what, but I have to be told if somebody's not interested in rock and roll and geopolitics or sports and fitness, I might not know that that person is not interested, you know, in these special interests of mine, and I might not know because I've been working on it, because for 9 years by several citizens who have experience in the healthcare system have diagnosed me with Asperger's, but I refused it. I said no, until about 3.5 years ago during COVID. I said, makes sense, yeah, I am an Aspie 100%, and makes sense all the problems I had to keep jobs and maintain friendships and isolation and self-harm, self-bullying, of course, all the trauma and all that jazz and rock and roll. Well, now, joyous on the road. But there's hope, because the book Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, thank you to my anonymous friend who rented it from the library, loaned it for me 4 times, and it opened my eyes, you know, to certain vulnerabilities which we have, because we can be, of course, vulnerable in certain situations, Aspies, and not know exactly, you know, certain things can put us in a vulnerable position and can be problematic, you know. So from now on, the solution for friends is pledge your allegiance, our family or friends with benefits only. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. You gotta be 18 plus, we rock and roll, exchange, trade, massage therapies, food, clothing, blah 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 blah. No, yes, maybe. Just don't make me your enemy. The thunder pestilence on the body sea. And so this difference can be also a curse, which turns into a blessing, especially around those special interests which we have. So for me, for us Aspies, maintaining jobs is also problematic. And it's a big problem for Aspies in the 21st century. Our the unemployment rates are 11 times higher for Aspies. 11 times. 11 times. Can you imagine 11 times higher? 11 times higher. 11 times higher. 11 times. So it's about 80%, even more than 80 sometimes. 80, that's 4 out of 5. 8 out of 10 Aspies. It's not that I had trouble not getting a job. I had many jobs, employments, but it's just maintaining them. Sometimes it's just 4 months, 3 months, a few weeks, a few days, 4 months. Maintaining them long term, because our difference makes us a bit, it can be things we just don't fully understand, or we can't really socialize that well with others, and the workspace is made for it's now made for neurodivergence. It's made mostly for neurotypicals, right? So this incomprehensions can arise, of course, from these struggles and prepositions where we are now, of the diameter of the circumposition, where we have now the affectation that is not something which can impede intellectual conversations and intellectual or philosophical wise or other things, but it can certainly impede long-term employment. Long-term employment can be a problem. That's why the high unemployment rates, 4 out of 5, 8 out of 10, 80%, sometimes even more than 80. So it's 11 times higher than for you, and we're a tiny community of less than 1%. Because Aspies, there's not a lot. And the other problem is high depression and suicidal rates. Another problem, big high depression and suicidal rates. And there's a fourth problem. The depression and suicidal rates are 9 times higher for Aspies, although again, we're less than 1% of the population. We're a tiny small fraction of the population, the community. We're less than 1%. That's the depression and suicidal rates. The depression and suicidal rates. The depression and suicidal rates are 9 times higher. And the fourth problem is high dropout rate. The high dropouts. Dropping out of high school, dropping out of higher education, college, university. Myself, I have a high school diploma. I do have a high school diploma, I do have a high school diploma, but I went to some college, but I dropped out. I didn't pursue higher education. I don't have a college degree, university level English proficiency, because I guess linguistically, Aspie, sometimes we can be above average, or sometimes mathematically as well. Most of the time, generally, Aspies are pretty well above average in mathematics. But again, only 20% are good in computer science. Don't ask me to hack or code for you. I'm not there yet. And my parallel self, in the year of darkness, it is the 10th of November, 9th of November. It's the 9th of November 2029 in the year of darkness. Is the 9th of November still, going on the 10th, because I'm traveling between Germany, US, Canada, Israel constantly, in those 4 countries, and I develop supercomputers, microchips, telecommunication gadgets, microchips, telecommunication gadgets, microchips, supercomputers, satellites, and all things of supercomputing, telecommunications, surveillance. I'm a super Aspie scientist in that parallel life. I also build AI structures and coding AI programs, linked satellites with webcams and telescreens for the NORAD complex, NATO complex, as a matter of fact. And we're in the year of darkness. 9th of November 2029. 9th of November 2029. Ninth of November 2029. 9th of November 2029. In the year of darkness, that's bus 66. In the year of darkness, 9th of November 2029. So I'm not going to try to connect much with my parallel self living in that parallel life, who also has Asperger's. I'm just going to, of course, say it again on today that finalizing, of course, on Asperger's is not a disease, and friends will benefits from me only. Thank you. Don't waste my time or pledge your allegiance. Support the dream, the dancing goddess, and the dragon kingdom. Fundamentally, is a call for a public-private partnership, to call for the Imperial Republic to fuse Canada, United States in my way best. It's a dragon versus Trump. I carry those red gloves, a backpack. Have been him and will continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match ever since 2018. My anonymous friend gifted me those red gloves, by which, of course, I have been and will continue to challenge Donald Trump, and I got them back in 2018. I did a lot of boxing with them because dancing is my favorite sport, but I love gridiron, North American football. Please reduce the cost of the tickets, NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB, and give some tickets to the public workers, sanitation workers with it. And the owners need to mass finance a little bit of that more public sanitation and reducing the cost, and give some financing to the women's sports leagues a little bit more, especially the PWHL. Dancing is a sport, and love boxing. Have been and will continue to challenge the granddaddy Trump. I was born in the United States 3 times post 1776, once as a woman, twice as a man. Served in the same United States Armed Forces. 2 different wars, same US Army, 156 years apart. The wars were. Just read George Patton, Through a Glass Darkly. That's one of my favorite poems. Through a Glass Darkly, George Patton. Through via a glass darkly, George Patton. Through via a glass darkly. Through a glass darkly. And he didn't mention he was born a woman there. He only mentions his male masculine incarnations, but yours truly, who's androgynous now due to me being born since ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, Babylon, ancient Sumer, ancient Roman Empire in USA post 1776 Independence Day, here in Canada as a Quebecois between 1688 and 1735, and met Louis Sid in a past life. Sometimes was born a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a man, a woman, a woman, a man. That you get that 50-50 now. And George Patton was my wife 2600 so years ago, and I was his wife. So we were both married, and once he was my wife and once I was his husband. So vice versa, I was his wife in a past incarnation, George Patton's wife, and that's that rock and roll, you know. So Asperger's, I'm also a mystic, and it's not a disease, it's not a mental illness, it's not an illness at all. It has its characteristics, which can be, of course, more difficult for one to understand and fully, of course, critique, to build friendships, you know. And it's a Dragon versus Trump event, you know. Having him, and will, of course, continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match ever since 2018. I got those red gloves in the backpack, you know, and got those red gloves by which I am challenging Donald Trump, and have been challenging Donald Trump ever since, of course, Donald Trump imposed tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel, and that imposition, of course, of tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel made it so that I kind of got into politics starting then, you know, and that's when I kind of got myself into politics. So Granddaddy Trump made a mistake, and well, we got some other potholes that need to be on that fix. So yeah, have been him and will continue to challenge Donald Trump to that boxing match. It's important, you know, to build the four. And yeah, we lack friends. We can't keep friends too much or can't keep employment, but sometimes we do, and sometimes we work in those special interests, which is my hope will, especially all the dream call for the public-private partnership is fundamentally my work as a geopolitical analyst, theorist, strategist, and philosopher, and artist, athlete, and mystic is all revolving around what I am, part of my work, and calling it to be our work, a public-private partnership, and of course all the work that we have done and we still have to do, of course, now in the preposition where we are now, you know, to be on the left and on the right and in the middle to that, and that's what we have to do there. And we have to incarnate, and we have to, of course, be now to be propositioned about all the internal dynamics of our multifactorial civilization and multi-diverse civilization, that we are this tiny community of neurodivergence, and we have to build bridges, build the 4 bridges. Sometimes there's, just like when you order coffee or fries, the bridges can be small, medium size, large or extra large. Small, medium, large or extra large. Of course, those are 4 categories of bridges. 4 categories of bridges. Generally, those are the bridges which we have, of course, to build. But we can, of course, build other bridges, and it could be different types of bridges. And that's, of course, the building of the bridges which we have, of course, to endeavor ourselves to be, and to build in the dynamics where we are now in the plurality of being, and affixing and transposing all the elements where we are different, and then building on the common interests, and thus start to lay the bricks for the building or small bridges, medium-sized bridges, large bridges, or extra large bridges. So of course all those dynamics where we are now, to be interplexed in all the civilizational complexes where we are as a dynamic, as a dynamic complex now. And me, I love these flowers. Oh yeah. By the yellow flowers like that, when there are a bunch of legions of yellow flowers, that just lightens up my whole, just my mood, my quadruples my smile. So let's build the bridges. Let's build the kingdom, the empire together. Pledge your legions the 63, and let's build the 4. It's a Dragon versus Trump event, auctioning those red gloves, which are in the backpack. Carrying them in the backpack right now, in this back. I saw the backpack, and those red gloves are in it, Those red gloves are in it. They were gifted by my anonymous friend, who wasn't my friend because of the money, because I never had any really. And yeah, I got those. I sweated in them, so I put a little bit of that dragon price with them. I guess I lost some weight in them. Since I started my fitness journey back in 2017, I lost about between 80 and 93 pounds. And crossing Canada was such an event that I came out of my depression and stopped being suicidal. And I'm gonna close the chapter on Asperger's. And these are so beautiful also, these big yellow ones. Look at that. Oh, nice. Get a whiff of that good smell. So of course, you have to build the bridges. And we can be very different, and we have our traits, which are odd, weird, but we have our strengths. Paradoxically, our strengths, not necessarily from higher learning, because some Aspies do go, but it's a higher dropout for Aspies. But those special interests, we can be self-taught and we can excel at them. And myself, of course, when we're going to go into geopolitics in a bit, is that I predicted what's happening now back in 2019. I predicted it. I predicted back in October 2019 that there's going to be, of course, an international conflagration. And so made, created, and produced the workout training program system designed made to go hand in hand with such a scenario where we have arrived at this point in time now. So before we're going to go into that, I'm going to just, of course, discuss the 4 buildings which I will to build together with you. So I will to build the 4. It's going to take a building. Oh, I dropped something. This is for my, in case I gotta blow my nose. I'm gonna have my tissue, and I don't want to leave it there. I just dropped it now because I was reaching for putting my glasses in there, and I was reaching for the lion bag. Thank you to my anonymous friend. See, there's a lion on it. See the lion. See the lion. See the lion. See the lion. There's that lion. And that's that bag. Thank you, my anonymous friend. Auctioning everything that I'm wearing, the underwear, the pants, the socks. $1 million each. So you got the underwear, the socks, the backpack, the hat, the shirt, the belt, and my shorts. So those 7 items, seven times $1 million is 7 million. 7 million, that means that's half is 3.5 million for me, 3.5 million for my anonymous friend, right? So that's how we're gonna get that rock and roll, and we're gonna drill it, and intermittent on the plateau where we have now, to get the dynamics to. I will to build the 4 together with you. So read Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. Read. I totally encourage all neurotypicals or neurodivergents, people with autism or Aspies, have Asperger's and different levels of autism. Just read, but it's specifically for Aspies, for people with Asperger's. It's called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. It's a great book. It opened my eyes, my vulnerabilities, and I learned a lot how I need to build these bridges and how I can live in your world. The world is pretty much structured for neurotypicals, and how we have to live in the neurotypical world together, and for the greater good I am, for world peace, but most and foremost for the North American collective and NORAD NATO, because I'm a North American. Personally, I don't consider myself a member of a diaspora. I'm a world citizen as much as I can be, but last time I left just Montreal, the island was 2017. You know, I haven't been out of the island for wow, 8 years. And before that, I just don't remember. I left, and I had some writings that I went. I don't remember because my memory, personal memory, before February 2014 is like on the raw retrograde amnesia and blackout. But I had written that I went, on a trip to Cuba. Supposedly I went. I had it on a journal, and I had a cigar which I had for like 7 years. I think I smoked it in 2016 or 2017. Then I taken on the trip when I went crossing Canada, maybe 2016, 2015 summers. And I had it, supposedly I had bought it in summer 2009 when I went in Cuba, when I visited Cuba, but I just don't remember. I just don't remember that far. Again, 2014, February 2014, that's 11 years. And February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. So wow, it's gonna be 11 years and 7 months already. More than 11 years ago. So in other words, I have a good memory of the past years. It's just my life, personal life, like high school, and what was I doing before February 2014? Who was I really? What was I doing? You know, I know what I was doing in the past years. Working out, training, exercising, getting out of depression, and studying, learning, and doing geopolitics. And supposedly, because from high school, from 2003, I have a reference letter. I have a reference letter from a high school teacher. And that reference letter from the high school teacher was, of course, the reference letter from the high school teacher, which supposedly I wanted to go to Kingston Military College. So I guess geopolitics, because if you want to go to a military academy, you have to have a little bit of knowledge of geopolitics. So from what I know, geopolitics was also for decades my special interest, you know, also known as obsessive interest. And from all my writings in my journals, I was living as an undiagnosed official Aspie in the neurotypical world. That's the problems that I had along the way. That's why I was attacked by surprise. Maybe that's why. Maybe, I guess I don't remember what if I did drugs, hard drugs, if I was an alcoholic for a few years, and how much I lived in that small underground moldy, lots of mold place where I didn't even have a bathtub. I had a small bathroom, it was like a prison cell, and I had a small bathroom, and even the kitchen was in my room. So that's the problem, but it's not really a problem now because I'm pretty joyous and happy, content. I'm just financially stressed, you know. That's my only stress now, is monetary, but I gotta be grateful. My rent's paid, electricity bill's paid. I'm going to my second home, the mountain. I'm always open for business, and I know I'm different, and it's just friends with benefits. It's not a crime, it's not evil, it's not bad, it's not negative, you know. I channel my divine priestess, sometimes woman from past lives, incarnations. Once I was a priestess who orated the great Rethria. I was the priestess Pythia who orated the great Rethria to Lycurgus, and I think in 2014, in March or April, I went on the South Shore with, I think it was a general, or warrior, maybe a potential dragon. I went to see a movie, and before that, I lived there February 2014, and I went to see that movie, it was April 2014, a good movie. It was the sequel to 300. So now I'm going to discuss the sequel. Well, it's kind of like a prequel, you know? But it was, of course, the prequel to 300. It was a prequel. It was, of course, like a prequel, but it was a prequel, I guess, chronologically to 300. So now we're going to discuss what I will to build as the 4 buildings. What I will to build as the 4 buildings. Yeah. So now we're gonna go all the way to the mountain. So this is actually the mountain. We're already on the mountain, but this is kind of where Westmount and Mount Royal begins, you know? Where it begins. Where it begins. That's where it begins, right here, and that's where we're gonna let the main out, and we're gonna let our main, because we're going in the wild, and we're gonna discuss the fort that I will to build, you know. That is what it is with that, and that's what we gotta get doing like that. So as we go, that's where we're gonna get on that go with that, and that's where we have it to go all the way up from the, gonna go in the darkness. In the darkness. I just love coming here. Oh yeah, love coming here. It's so nice. Feels so. Gonna let my main out. Gonna go all the way. So I don't usually recommend for people to go where I go. When I go, where I go, I don't recommend for people to go, because it's rather you stay in the lights, because I go deep in the darkness where the fauna is. So I recommend people stay here rather than go inside in the forest, because the goddess is a fierce mistress. And so I recommend you stay here in the light rather than going in the dark, because she has her ways, and she breaks our illusions. So stay in the light. We're gonna go deep in the dark, because we love the light and the dark. So rock and roll for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, and nurses, those in the daycares, and changing some diapers, and that's where we go, and that's where we go, and rock and roll, and that's where we have it, you know, and that's where we're gonna get that rock and roll. So see, that's where we go. Here we go. From the light into the dark. Stay here, don't come in the dark, 'cause I know the way. So best if you stay there and not venture out here, because here's where we got, you know, on the propositions, and it's always a love affair if I don't make it back. If I don't make it back, well, bear with me with Papa Crowley. a third of me up in New Jersey, and she's a mistress, which is a fierce one sometimes, and that's it. So now we're going to discuss what I will to build the 4. See already my illusions, because I got that priestess. Now we're taking the here and you come you. Lose your illusions, you know. So you see the lights there, but here you got minimal lights. This is the eyes, which have of course to be consequently gotta be on the go. You see, that is something when you have to get doing. Sometimes, you know, you gotta just be, and I'm happy here, content, joyous. She can be a fierce mistress. Her hair, she dances with her brother the sun and gets a kiss from the goddess of infinite space, infinite stars above that new Here we are, of course, in the supposition, and I'm gonna discuss what I will to build the 4. Just wanna do a priestess to the goddess who credited trillions of kisses. Who credited trillions of kisses. Who credited trillions of kisses for me to have to lay the foundations for our empire of the 63. Empire of the 63. Our empire of the 63. And of course, this imposition, you know, is something which we have, of course, to do, and we have, of course, to evaluate what we got to get doing. And mistress of the mystery, goddess kisses, let it be, for our empire rise and see, was as the priestess who orated the great Erythria, Tulicurgus, a great priestess who orated the great Erythria, Tulicurgus in a past life, as I am the priestess, not a whole priestess, but a goddess. Keep my holy, sacred, and divine name out of your mouth if it's not for blessing, otherwise let it be pestilence. And of course, here's where we are together, where we got, and that is something when we involve ourselves. You know, I guess I am grateful for the trillions of kisses, 718 trillions of kisses. Priestess Hannah dances, cheerleads the rise of the 63 empire. She can be fierce, the mistress on the mountain, but she's kind to the righteous and just. She can be fierce to the when it comes to her karma. Of course, the ones where we have now to be appelled in all the institutional representation where we are now, to of course divulge ourselves where we are, joyous in the dark. When you come here, sometimes coming to the empire, pledging allegiance, our family, you have to leave the baggage at the door. You know, you have to leave the baggage at the door. You have to leave the baggage at the door. You know, it's something which you have to do, and you have to appellate in all the representative fact that I'm not alone here. I'm with the mistress and the flora and the fauna, the hawks, the squirrels, the chipmunks, of course all the other ones animals, which we are now, of course, involved to be now, of course, in the domain, to get on the left and on the right and in the middle and all those protrusion where we are to be now, to get doing on the civilizational aspects where the domain names are to be the flora and the fauna, the kingdom of the empire, the flora and the fauna, and all the aspects where we are now involved in all the life-affirming matters, where we are, where we be, and what we do, and what we see. And in the darkness, as a paradox, sometimes we see in the dark. So now, another poem, and we're gonna finish discussing the four. That's why I say to people, if you don't know the mountain, don't come here in the dark. Again, if something happens to me, bury me with Papa Crowley. Bury me atop in here for 11 years in the top. After 11 years, send me to Hampton, New Jersey. And after 11 years, send me to Cairo. The city of the pyramids to Cairo. The city of the pyramids to Cairo. And of course, from Cairo, send back here atop the mountain. And from here to every 11 years to Crowley, Hampton, New Jersey. And find a fourth place, if you will, every 11 years to make it 44, whatever the case may be. And I died here during COVID, and nothing that I will to go back to, but I will to build the 4 buildings with you. And now we're going atop the mountain, so we're walking, just like you're seeing the other videos, we're walking the same trajectories, the same kind of paths, the same trails, only in the dark. But of course, doesn't matter for me. Night, dark, storm, shines. Well, I love that sun. It doesn't matter, of course, to get it on the go with that, and you gotta get it on that with that to be the signification of the accolades of whatever the case may be with that. And you gotta get those appellations and the counting, of course, that we have to be intermittent now in the building of the 4. So we're gonna change topics. Love you, goddess. She says, I don't need your love, I got the pyramids. She doesn't need us to build the temples or the forgotten goddess temple, which is one of the 4 buildings that I will to build, because she's got the pyramids standing for thousands of years, the tombs of initiation, the tombs of temples and tombs of initiation and knowledge, and in the pyramids in Cairo. So she's got those. She calls me cuck. I said, if I'm gonna be a good cuckold, I'm gonna be the greatest C-U-C-K in the universe. So, clit, dick, dick, clit, androgynous, pansexual, blah, blah. Drop down, give me some 10 push-ups, keep my holy sacred out of your name, rebirthing Adrian Hannah Dragon, if it's not for a blessing. Salute, thank the farmers for you eat, those who flip the hamburgers, cheeseburgers, construction workers, bakers, nurses, electricians, plumbers, IT workers, deco workers, changing some diapers, all those involved in the production, distribution of food, all those, of course, now on the trail doing, of course, a little bit of that rock and roll, and struggling artists. Give some chat if you're a millionaire, billionaire, blah, 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 blah. And that is just, of course, the appellation where we are now. In the wilderness, in the dark, with the main out, and that is just something which you have to build the 4, build the 4, together where we are the construct, of course, of building the 4, and that is something which, of course, we have, of course, to be, and of course, to build here. That is just something which I will to build now, and together with you, we're gonna build it. So let's build the forgotten goddess, nonetheless, to be 11 times bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory, than the St. Joseph's Oratory, to be 11 times bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory. That's just something we have to be, of course, to be building that building, and to be building also on the Canadian-US border, on the Canadian-US border. Let's build the Imperial People's Coliseum, to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, who changed names several times. It's in Louisiana, New Orleans, just like I changed names, to get it on the go now and get it on that XYZ, and of course to build it on the Canadian-US border, to build the Imperial People's Colosseum to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, would change names just like I changed names, although officially still gotta pay that money to change it, build the Caesar Superdome, and of course Integree, the Caesar Superdome, to be built along with the Forgotten Goddess Temple and the house pyramid, house pyramid, house of the dragon, that's scarlet, crimson, scarlet, red, and that's what it is with that, that's what it is with the go, and that's what we have to be doing on the left and on the right, and on the XYZ situational awareness, that we're gonna have sports in perpetuities on the Canadian West border, and we're gonna build it, of course, XYZ, and let's build the Forgotten Goddess Temple with it, and the Imperial People's Colosseum, which is gonna be 11 times bigger than that sports arena where many Super Bowls were fought, played, and battled out, or many Super Bowls were fought, played, and battled out, you know, where many Super Bowls were fought, played, and battled out. One of my favorites, even though my 49ers lost, Super Bowl 47, aka Blackout Ball, aka Harbor Ball, aka Bro Ball, is one of my favorite Super Bowls. Although my 49ers lost, not by much, by 3 points, it is one of my favorite Super Bowls they're in, and that's we're approaching again now the lights you can see from the mountain, because now we're walking on that bridge that you see in many of my videos. You see, of course, the bridge where we have built it, of course, to go, and that's what we have to get doing, of course, with that, and that's what it is with that, and that's what I have to be doing like that to get presuppositions, of course. So we are now to get it on the go, and that's what we got on the left and on the right, and that is something which we have to go doing with that, and it's something which we gotta get doing, you know, something which we have to do now. And you know, you see a little bit of lights there, a little bit of lights from the darkness. We come in the dark, and that's what we got. A little bit of building of those Imperial People's Colosseum. I stepped on some rocks. Imperial People's Colosseum. Somebody ventures out a little bit with a light. That's good with that. And the Imperial People's Colosseum to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, which changed names, of course. We gotta get it on that, change names ourselves to get that money paper, but officially I changed it, and that's just what it is with that, and that's just where we go, you know. So that's here, the Belvedere Conjonac. I guess we made it at the top, so me and Donald Trump are gonna inaugurate the biggest ever sports coliseum arena. We're gonna build the Imperial People's Coliseum to be 11 times bigger than the Harbor Ball. 11 times bigger than the Harbor Ball, you know, that's what it is with that. 11 times bigger than the Harbor Ball, of course, to getting on the go. So we're gonna build it on that, 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. And of course, we're gonna build a massive structure to have sports in perpetuities. For sports in perpetuities, we're gonna have me and Donald Trump fighting in a boxing match. We're gonna have sports in perpetuity. Sports in perpetuity, fitness 24/7 is gonna be the most massive ever construction. Sports arena construction ever is gonna be built 11 times bigger than that Super Bowl, and where the Super Bowl 47 was played and battled out with that, and that's what we got, and that's how we do it, you know, on the side of the things, and that is sometimes what we got, you know, to be building and to be building on that, and that is just something what we have, you know. Remember when we took the here we go. It's just, it's always, you know, was always. It was always us. It was always us. reached. Remember. That's my favorite pyramid skyscraper there. That's the one. That is my favorite. That pyramid there, see? So nice. I really love that one. That's the pyramid. It was always nice. Amidst the travail of time. Amidst the pomp of toil and war. It was always me. It was always us. It was me. It was always me. It was always us. It was always us. It was always us. This is us like. Tens of our slaves. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Beautiful flowers there. That's all we got. That's all we do. Beautiful flowers there. Yes, look at those. Those are nice. Super nice there, see? Look at that. Aren't they nice? That's how we're gonna get drilling. So it's a beautiful thing which we got, and and I discussed build the fort, the Imperial People's Coliseum on the Canadian-US border. We're gonna build it, and that's why we're gonna get drilling with that, you know. It was always us. Necessary. White boys. White boys. Welcome to Trump's America. Big white things. White boys. White boys. White boys. This is beautiful. That's it. That's all. Theatrics. That's it.
Yeah, that was a different. That was a different class.
He's an acrobat.
That's where it's going.
So the 4 buildings which we need to build, the Imperial People's Colosseum. I gotta hydrate, we gotta go get that hydration. The Imperial People's Colosseum. The Imperial People's Colosseum is just... So we gotta build a fort on the Canadian-U.S. border, the Imperial People's Colosseum. So of course, the Imperial People's Colosseum on the Canadian-U.S. border, we're gonna have to build it concomitantly to building it on the level where we're gonna build 11 times bigger. You know, they're gonna be 11 times bigger than he's gonna be 11 times bigger than Caesar's Superdome. Caesar's Superdome, you know. And of course they changed names several times, you know, just like before, you know, something's before, and that is something what I gotta get doing with that, and that is something what you have, of course, to do now in all the situational aspects where we are. That building the Forgotten Goddess Temple. The Forgotten Goddess Temple is something which we have to build. And of course the People's House of the Dragon Pyramid, along with the Rainbow People's Colosseum, the Rainbow People's Colosseum. That is just something which we have to build. And me and Donald Trump, we're going to inaugurate the biggest ever sports arena ever in sports history. That Colosseum, the Imperial People's Colosseum, is going to be 11 times bigger than the Hardball, where the Hardball Ball, aka Black Hawk Ball, aka Pro Bowl, Super Bowl 47 was fought, played and battled out. And of course that's where we're gonna build together. All in conclusion, that's what we're gonna build. And today, September 11, you know, gotta be in memoriam, in the solicitations, and for my brothers and sisters, you know, who gotta get it on the left and on the right and in the middle, and all those concomitancies where we got now, you know, to salute and see, of course, another the pyramid there. That's what we're gonna get doing with that, and they're gonna get on that XYZ, and we're gonna build more pyramids together, you know. We're gonna build more pyramids together, and that's what we're gonna be building out that pyramid there. See that rock roll? That's my favorite skyscraper. I'm just gonna stretch a bit here, and we're gonna build it on the Canadian-U.S. border, right there somewhere, right there across the U.S. border. And of course, we're gonna get it on that drill, and that's what we gotta get doing on that. And there's gonna be, of course, on that rock roll, the 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. Before that, it was used to be known as the Louisiana Superdome, and before that, it was known as the Mercedes-Benz. Before that, it was known, of course, as the Louisiana Superdome. So it changed names several times, and that's what how it is with that, and that's how we gotta get doing with that. We gotta get that rock and roll with it, and we gotta get it on the go for that, and we gotta get it on those dynamics, you know, to get it on the XYZ situational complex, to be that rock and roll with it, and to be, of course, on the sensation and the appellation where we are, of course, to be all the meditational aspects of this special North American collective. Gotta do that 360, get out of the way. If you hear that, firefighters, make some loving to our firefighters. We love our firefighters across the 63. Every time we hear the ambulance, firefighters, emergency, we gotta sing that little V cadence for total SSD, security, service, and defense across the North American plateau. Total integrated Dragon Army, pledge your legions, Democratic Republican centrism, always for the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the plumbers, the electricians, all those welders, all those involved in the production, distribution of food, all those now, of course, to get it on that. See that bridge there? The bridge, of course, is something which we have, of course, to contribute to building on that bridge. Looks a bit on that special colors. I'm just stretching here. So what I'm doing here, if you want to see what I'm doing, is there's a metal bar. So I'm actually stretching my legs here on this metal bars. It's not that visible, they're not that visible outside, but I'm just gonna like to show it. You can see it more during the day. So let's build the Imperial People's Colosseum together, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, along with the Forgotten Goddess Temple, to build, of course, the Imperial People's Colosseum, and of course that drill to be built on the side there. We see a bit of light, somebody coming, see? This is where we are now here. If you can see a little bit of that, see? It's not that visible. Yeah, you can see the bars, part of the bars there, see? It's metal bars, so I have my legs and I'm stretching on that go, and somebody there coming on that little jogging rock and roll, and it's always good. You got that light, that's good for you. You got extra lights. It's always good to be on the prudent side when you go inside, and inside the forest, somebody's coming with that jog. Gotta get that safe, and you're among the few. Congratulations, keep it up. I'm always saluting those who make it in the dark, in the forest, and do a little bit of that good jogging and good loving with that. And it's always good to exercise a bit. Good for you, keep it up. Always free hugs here to all my allies and armies, and stay safe on the road, and safety, and workout, training, exercise. And I don't like violence, and I am hyper vigilant from my own experiences of being attacked by surprise. I'm hyper vigilant, so we're gonna learn to play that integrated defense, hot, and we're gonna build the North American People's Imperial Colosseum. It's gonna foster, we're gonna have special events to celebrate work and channel the aggression, sports in perpetuity 24/7, you know. That's what they want to get doing like that, and we gotta get doing on that drill. So let's go. Beautiful rock and roll. So now we're gonna discuss we're gonna go hydrate, and we're gonna discuss the DMA, direct military assistance or action. Direct military assistance or action is something which we have, of course, to go and to appellate in all the concomitant appellations. We're gonna discuss now the DMAA. So pay attention, focus on the DMAA. The direct military assistance or action or assistance. It is an interval production. It is, of course, something which is a mystery to some, but it will be clear as you listen to my past discussions about it, and it's something which it will be elucidated and no longer a mystery once you listen several times to this mini lecture, because it requires, of course, hours and hours and hours, and that's what we gotta get doing with that, and that's what we gotta get doing on that drill to get it doing now, you know. So she gotta get on that go to love XYZ, and that's what we gotta get doing on that, you know, something which we gotta be doing on the love. So the DMAA, direct military assistance or action, the direct military assistance or action is related to NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization member states, countries, as it relates to taking or intaking or not taking action and its potential consequences. So the DMAA has a C, has the letter C. So direct military assistance and action, DMAA, direct military assistance and action, has, of course, a consequence, of course, where we are now to be appellated in, of course, the domain where we are in the prudent side, of course, to be, and of course to get it on the go now for the domain, of course, where we have now where we are internally and all the potential consequences which already the DMAA has, of course, consequently created, has, of course, consequently created. So the DMAA has, of course, created these, of course, difficulties for us into the encounter, of course, all the machinations where we are now, to be conclusive and intermittent about that. We are, of course, something where we are now in the suppositions and the prepositions where we are now available on the North American Collective to be establishing this theory, this framework, theoretical framework and philosophy as a working tool, as a necessary working tool. As you know, the motto of NATO is in animus in consuelo liber, animus in consuelo liber, animus in consuelo liber, animus in consuelo liber. So that is, of course, something where we have now to get doing with that. There we go now. Every time I come here. And of course, all the concomitant developments, of course, vis-a-vis and relative to the DMAA, of course, have to be in the conclusive side of the appellation where we are now structured and where we have involved ourselves in conflicts when NATO countries were not part of NATO, were in conflicts outside of NATO. So that's where the DMAA is a frame of reference, a theoretical framework, and of course a theory, a protocol, and all the working tools where we have now to be on the side of the reference where we got on the position of the DMAA, the direct military assistance or action, to get, of course, on the side of all the committees and the non-committees of NATO that exist. It has to go to the higher echelons of the NATO alliance's decision making. So animus in consuelo liber, of course, is in deliberation, a mind unfettered in deliberation. So a mind unfettered in deliberation is the motto of NATO. Consequently, where we have, of course, that prudently side, of course, where we are now, of course, to be in the side of all the positions where we are now, to develop ourselves in this confluency, and of course to integrate the DMAA from all decision processing levels, at all levels of the NATO alliance, which is an alliance which dates from 1949. So to clear, to stipulate, and to fully understand the DMAA, the direct military assistance and action, is the constituencies, of course, what we have, of course, that situational awareness that it has nothing to do with humanitarian aid, because I gotta be grateful to my anonymous friend whom I had a conversation with, and of course my anonymous friend draw out some important fundamental questions, a bit on the matter of being keen and important and intellectually, of course, aware of the fundamentals where we are now, of course, stipulated and organized in such a manner as we are, of course, done, or we have done in the past, but perhaps will not do in the future due to this DMAA potentially having consequences. So I'm going to hydrate, we're going to discuss this, and we're going to discuss it, and we're going to rock and roll from that to the DRT theory once we're going to get fundamentally going do now, of course, to get it on the left and on the right, and that's what we got to be doing with that. So in a few seconds here, I always admire those who build this fountain of water here. See, it's water on that gus, so always admire those with brains and muscle who went up via the gravity, fighting gravity, and all the brains and the muscle to build this fountain so that I be able to HYDRAT, because it's time to hydrate on that workout already a few hours. So it's time, of course, to get that proposition and hydrate, of course, in a very, very vigorous manner. Drink some water here. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that was it. So now we're gonna be even more vigorously discussing the direct military assistance or action. So the direct military assistance or action is of course something which we have to discuss again and again and again because it's super important. And again, keep in mind that I predicted what's happening now back in 2019, in a general matter. And of course that I predicted what's happening now in a general matter, total affluence, of course, to be, the victims of the civilizational prudence where we are now, to be officiating, of course, all the dynamics where we are now, of course, to be on the concomitant aspects of all the civilizational dynamics of the life-affirming situations where we are, potentially to be now involved in the domain names and the domains inclusive where we are now, to be especially involved in this. I gotta sound the alarm a bit because since August 1st we are designated by, so I predicted what's happening now generally in the world. I predicted in 2019 an international conflagration, international conflagration and international conflagration with that. So an international conflagration that I predicted, of course, the international conflagration and the situational awareness that is with that, and that is what it is, the situational awareness now. So of course, being that I predicted what's happening now, again, that, and that's something which we have to be doing with that, it's something where we gotta be doing on that goal and something to be appellated intensely about. So I predicted what's happening now in a general way across the world. I predicted a World War III, a global conflagration, a general war, a great war in the world. But I did not predict that there's going to be a deterioration of relations with the United States. So I did not predict the deterioration of relations with the United States. That I did not predict. That there's going to be a deterioration of relations with the United States. And I get goosebumps because since August 1st of this year, we are by designation by the White House official dictum written in black and white on the whitehouse.gov as an official statement of the motive and the reason of the increase of tariffs on Canada by the Trump administration. We are designated, this is an alarm, this is a crisis, this is something undesirable. You know that since August 1st of this year, Canada is designated, this I did not predict, by the way, the deterioration of relations with the United States. We are designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat. This is serious. So basically, I did not predict that there's going to be a deterioration of relations with the United States. That I did not predict. I predicted an international conflagration, but I did not predict that there's going to be a deterioration of relations with the United States such as it is now. This is also new for me, right? So since August 1st, we're designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat by the United States. You realize this is super serious. There it stated that due to the lack of our federal enforcement, law enforcement, the lack of coordination. So coordination implies a need for cooperation automatically, not necessarily when you cooperate. When you cooperate, you could just exchange information, and of course other things you can exchange information. So of course that is the thing which you have to focus on when you cooperate. But when you coordinate, you automatically cooperate. But you don't necessarily coordinate when you cooperate, right? The words. But the word there is cooperate with U.S. law enforcement. And of course, it's mentioned that the amount of fentanyl that crossed in 2025 has tripled from 2024, right? Has tripled from 2024, and it could have potentially killed 16 million Americans. So, of course, we're designated as an unusual, an extraordinary threat were designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat to the American people since August 1st. You realize how serious this is, you know, and as a constant, that for us, what I made a statement, I'd make it now again and again and again. Geopolitically, that is our number one priority in foreign affairs for Canada, as the king is absent, my fellow Canadians, the king is absent, is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, military, security, social, cultural relations with the United States, and the United States, also my brothers and sisters in the USA, vis-a-vis Canada as well. So this is a reciprocal, and this is a constant. This is a constant like the pi number. It's not the pie is a symbol. It's not the pie is in an edible pie, a comestible pie, an apple pie, a blueberry pie, a chocolate pie, a vanilla pie. Not a pie in that manner. Not a pie in that manner. It has nothing to do with that in that manner of a pie, right? It has nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with that. It's the pi is of course the symbol. 3.1416. It's always a constant, always a constant, always a constant. So it's that pi symbol, which is represented by the letter N. N for neutral, natural, neurodivergent, neurotypical. Normandy, the letter N has two heads, two faces, two heads. On each side, the heads and the faces look different. One kind of looks like a hawk, H-A-W-K, my totem bird. The other one kind of looks like a canine, like a doggy type of head. And of course, they're one, basically. They're two-headed, just like our empire. When we fused Canada and the United States in the 63 Imperial Perpetual Republic, Imperial Democratic Republic, is going to be two-headed, two-faced, two-headed. One for goodness and kindness, benevolence. The other one for punishment and punishment. The other one is going to be for punishment, benevolence, and the like. So it's going to have like two heads, two faces, our empire. Just like that N, which represents the constant. It's not a variable. So you cannot argue with what I said. You can't say no. Or maybe. You gotta say yes. It is a constant. It has been so for decades, since the dissolution of the British Empire. It is so today. And it will be so tomorrow. So of course, being that it is a constant, it has to be affirmed in a positive. That is our main interest when it comes to foreign affairs. Our number one priority when it comes to foreign affairs has to be dedicated for us to have the best, most cordial, intellectual, diplomatic, political, financial, commercial, security, defense, military relations with the United States. That is our number one priority. And for the United States, it is vis-a-vis Canada as well as it is for us vis-a-vis United States. Although in the United States, you have a border with Mexico as well, right? So that cannot be negotiated with. So back to the DMAA, direct military assistance or action. Now we have the frame of reference, the plateau, and again it has nothing to do with humanitarian aid, providing food, providing sanitation pads, providing baby diapers, baby cream, providing food, providing products to cleaning products, sanitary pads, all that. Humanitarian sanitation aid. No, it's strictly military. DMAA, that's why the M is there. Direct military assistance or action or assistance, vice versa, or both. They have in parentheses a potential C. So this is a theory, this is a philosophy, this is of course a frame of reference which has to be consulted at all levels of NATO, like the motto of NATO is animus in consuelo liber, unfettered in deliberation. A mind, that's the translated to English. Animus in consuelo liber is a mind unfettered in deliberation. So this has to be deliberated in order for us to take action in the future, or not to take action, or not to assist non-member NATO member countries which are at conflict with each other, because it has consequences, and some of the consequences are potential transnational criminal syndicate organized groups being financed, by outside exterior forces whence NATO took assistance, such in the case of Russia-Ukraine. The potential consequence of that. And you know, in the year of darkness, 9th of November 2029, I am an ASPI super scientist. I know everything there is to know about these antennas. I build super satellites, telecommunication projects, satellites, cubes, and cell phones, remote controls, and all things to do with science and civilization of science, and things such as this antenna and 3G, 4G, 5G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and everything to do with electronics such as this. In a parallel life, I'm a super aspy scientist, and there I design build super equipment such as this one. I design build super equipment such as this one, and here's the year of darkness, November 9, 2029, in that parallel life. So it's in the future, November 9, year of darkness, 2029. So now it is 11th of September 2025 here, so more than 4 years in the future. More than 4 years in the future, more than 4 years in the future, more than 4 years. So now back to the DMAA. It's a frame of reference, theoretical framework. Words, of course, can be, of course, a work in project, and a work in project, of course, is something which, of course, we have, of course, to be, of course, involved ourselves now in the proposition whence we are now, to be not just intellectual about it, but also to philosophical, intellectual, but also to put it into practice, to refrain if necessary from taking action because of the consequences. So an example of DMAA is in the past Yugoslavia, that's action and assistance, and Libya, Syria, and the newest one is Ukraine. Ukraine was not part of NATO. Actually, as a matter of fact, the Article 5 of NATO was only, of course, only invoked once, right? The Article 5 of NATO was only invoked once. Only invoked once. The Article of NATO was only invoked once, you know, they only invoked once. Was only invoked once. The Article of NATO was only invoked once. Article 5 was only invoked on September 11th, 24 years ago. In the history of NATO, 75 years, Article 1 was only invoked once. There has been no other invocation ever of Article 5, which is, because NATO is a collective military defense affair. NATO is a collective defense affair, right? NATO is a collective. So if one NATO member country is being attacked, then, of course, the other countries have to support. So, of course, Sweden is the 32nd. Sweden is the 32nd one. So Sweden is the 32nd one which has joined, right? Sweden is the newest one. And of course, before that, in October, before October 7th, of course, I was, of course, advocating, of course, for the Israel and Mexico to become officially the 32nd and 33rd, you know. The 32nd and 33rd, to become the 32nd and 33rd. The 32nd and 33rd, officially, you know. The 32nd and 33rd. Officially to become, of course, the 32nd and 33rd. The 32nd and 33rd. Officially. That's what I was advocating before October 7th. Now we're going to have to see what is going to go on now, because we have an escalation. And I'm going down the slope, so now it's a very dangerous path here. So I'm just going to bend my knees a little bit and consequently, of course, go down in, of course, a more prudent manner and bend my knees, and because it's a bit on the muddy side as well, so I'm gonna have to be careful. Here is very steep. In one of the videos you see during the day, it's even, I warn people to be careful here because it's steep even during the day. So I do it during the night, but I always take a little bit of a extra precaution by bending my knees as I go up and down here. So the DMAA, direct military assistance or action, is when NATO takes action or assistance. Action, it could be, of course, NATO planes bombing Yugoslavia, for example, Serbia, Belgrade in 1999, right? So other Libya, involvement in the Libyan civil war against ISIL, Afghanistan, or even, you could say even Taiwan, because countries from NATO assist Taiwan, mostly the United States, or Israel also. Israel is the case, because Israel is not part of NATO, right? So it could be Germany and United States and Canada and France, Britain. We send armaments and munitions, and we have sent to Israel as well. So it could be several incidents in countries, because of course NATO, Israel is not part of NATO, Ukraine is not part of NATO, was and is not. Those who joined, I guess there was not ever that a NATO member countries chose to exit. There has been a controversy about Turkey, because it seems that Turkey could be maybe not so long a member of NATO, but we'll see. But Turkey is officially a member of NATO at the present moment. It's just that it has been a controversial joining of Turkey joining NATO that has been, of course, opposed the most. I think there was a lot of opposition there still is internally in NATO member countries, the population. But now NATO has included Turkey, right, the country of Turkey. And many Eastern European countries which were part of the Warsaw Pact, of course, Poland. Now with the new incursion in Poland of the drones, we're going to see where that goes. And of course, Bulgaria, Romania as well. Romania, Poland were part of what's called Bulgaria, the Eastern Bloc, of course, the Warsaw Pact, the Warsaw Pact with that, and that's what it is with that. Civilizational complex, of course, to be in the interactions where we got to get doing with that. Of course, all the civilizational complex where we are now to be doing in all the appellations where we are being ourselves, and we are, of course, volition to be ourselves as independent, judicially prudent about, of course, concomitant and action where we are, of course, to be taken in the future to get it on the go now, and to be, of course, appellated where we are, to be construed about all the civilizational implications of further action or assistance by NATO, such as a World War III, or even member countries such as Russia, because we provided DMAA, direct military assistance or action, and this DMAA, direct military assistance or action, to kill potentially can help the other army, the other military in conflict with non-NATO member countries against the other. So in other words, we also take a position, a place, right, in non-NATO neutrality. So the DMAA has to be considered in the future because it has consequences, and the RCMP warned this since 2015, especially in the past 4 or 5 years during COVID. They of course warned us, of course, that they have the growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups. And what has happened, of course, since we see last year, of course, 25th of December, 25th of October, we have seen, of course, that there's been the dismantling of the biggest ever super lab. There has never been such a dismantling of the super lab in Canadian history since 25th of October last year, 2024. 25th of October of last year, 2024, there was the biggest ever seizure of the super lab in BC, British Columbia, by a transnational criminal syndicate organized group, of course, where has been, of course, they dismantled, of course, the biggest ever super lab, the biggest ever super lab in Canadian history. There has never been such a big laboratory dismantled of drugs. And they warned us for years. Since about 2015, the RCMP sounds the alarm that there's a growing transnational criminal syndicate organizations taking root, establishing themselves across Canada. And what is mentioned again back to the White House declarations, and official is still there on the whitehouse.gov paper, black and white, on August 1st, where once we are designated from August 1st, it's been less than 2 months, right? It's been about 40 days since Canada is designated. I get shivers when I discuss it, goosebumps. We're designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat, brothers and sisters, to the American people because of this lack of action that we implicated on. Big controversy, and the RCMP since 2015 warned us. There's a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups encrusting themselves in Canada since about COVID. There's a growing fentanyl production, growing transnational criminal organized groups. Some are coming from foreign, nefarious, antecedent, hostile governments. It could be perhaps Russia. It could be China, because we took assistance vis-a-vis Taiwan, right? Taiwan is an unresolved conflict of theirs. Since the days of the Cold War, that was exactly my prediction, of course, that Taiwan was, of course, that unresolved conflicts where we have, of course, so many conflicts in the past 20th century which were not fully resolved during the Cold War period. And, of course, this Cold War period and resolution, of course, was, of course, implicated. That was, of course, my main prediction, that due to these unresolved conflicts, these conflicts were going to recommence. But I did not predict that we, who are supposed to be your best family, and we're going to reestablish, after this little conflict, even stronger ties, and we're going to fuse Canada, United States, my way, via the DRT. Not just my way, our way, because it's not just my way to say that, but my ways, at this point in time, best. There's a mass public-private partnership, and with all that exists now is a mass public-private partnership, a superstructure built on what exists now between Canada and the United States via my DRT theory. So back to finalize the DMAA, it is a frame of reference to take or not take future action from today until tomorrow. Maybe another conflict that's not NATO related, maybe Kashmir, Pakistan, another one, right? If they go to war, if NATO will assist India, assuming more inclined to assist India. Or if another conflict arises between, for example, in Latin America, it could be. Like I said, because the conflict has not been resoluted, but before October 7th, I was advocating for Israel and Mexico at the same time simultaneously to parallel begin and commence to become the 32nd and the 33rd. The 32nd and the 33rd. The 32nd and the 32nd and the 33rd. The 32nd and the 33rd to become, of course, the 32nd and the 33rd. The 32nd and the 33rd respectively joined simultaneously. Just check my videos before October 7th. Now October 7th happened as 9/11 happened, and Israel said that it is their 9/11th, right? It is their 9/11th, October 7th. Now after this conflict is resolute, maybe Israel and Mexico should join NATO, right? I had this called for Israel and NATO to become as part of the Genesis 33rd. That's a reference, of course, to Jacob and Esau, of course, the twins. The Jacob and Esau twins, the Jacob and Esau twins, the Jacob and Esau twins, of course, which we are concomitantly to go do it and to go do it on that and go do it in deliberation and to be, of course, in the situational awareness where they are, to be conclusive in all the majesties, of course, where they are, of course, to be able to do it, of course, to go to do on that capabilities, of course, of getting it done. It's something which we have to be, of course, in the situational projects of the projectiles, which have to be, of course, launched on the situational multiplex, where we get the domain, of course, of being involved in the situational awareness, where we are to get doing now for the left and the right and the east and the west, and to be inclined to take action or to refrain from action via deep deliberation, as the motto of NATO goes, vis-a-vis the DMAA, direct military assistance for action or action or assistance. It could be vice versa, it could be interchange, It could be interchange and plural, of course. It could be interchange such as it is, the interchanging of the dynamics where we are to be now concomitantly about the situation where we had created potential consequences whence Russia and China covertly by secret means, secret police and finance riots, unrest, and transnational criminal syndicate organized groups. More and more I'm declaring this fentanyl as a bioweapon. More and more I'm declaring this fentanyl as a bioweapon. More and more I'm declaring this fentanyl as a bioweapon. So, of course, being that it is, of course, this bioweapon, you got, of course, to resolutely, of course, in constituency, to be, of course, all involved in the situational awareness. You move. You just move the pyramids. You That is the truth, The DMA has a potential consequence, of course, in the analysis of where we are now, in the prudence, of course, of all the capabilities, where we take action or inaction, or we don't, or we don't, whether we take action or we don't, See? So whether we take action or we don't take action, you know, so that is something where we have to be, where we have to be, you know, where we have to be conclusive ourselves about what we are, what we're doing, you know, because it's something where we have now to make this great new deal together, you know, and the DMAA has to be deliberation for the future. Well, of course, I always have for years and years advocated for the total SSD, right? SSD is only internal. NATO, NORAD, NATO, Canada, 63 first, and then NATO, SSD, security, service, and defense, you know. Security, service, and defense. Security, service, and defense, the security, service, and defense, you know. SSD, you know, the security, service, and defense. Security, service, and defense. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean, that is just the appellation where we have, of course, to be now in the domain where we are now, to be implicated, of course, in the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, in all the consequential positions where we are now, to be involved in all the trigonometries of this great theory, because it's a great one. I just discussed it a bit more generally, but generally has many more ramifications to it, many more categorizations, classifications. But the DMAA, direct military assistance or action, fundamentally is relation vis-a-vis non-NATO member countries. And the relation of us, whether we take, it has to be debated, it has to be deliberate whether to take action or assist militarily here, non-NATO member countries in the future, right? So that has to be totally, fully integrated and understood properly and dynamically so, in a dynamic manner. It has a dynamic, as it's in geopolitics evolved, conflicts can start any minute across the world in different other countries, right? So that is what it is with that. So now we're going to discuss the DRT, the debt fusion theory. Super important that I discuss it, the DRT, debt fusion theory, because it is the solution for both Canada and the United States, and of course it is part of the bipolar geopolitical strategy for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion for world peace. Of course, by fusing Canada and the United States into the Imperial Republican Perpetual Union complex, via creating the universal exchange, and by creating the universal exchange, and and of course in the totality where we are, of course, appellated to be, of course, in the integral manners. We have four main problems that affect us. These four main problems can be enumerated in different manners. But of course, the majority of the problems are facing us. One, the growing cost of living. Both Canada and the United States, that's why these four main problems are affecting both Canada and the United States, the majority of the population, not all, except for some who are billionaires, right? But it takes a mass PPP, public-private partnership, even BlackRock and Blackstone are two financial institutions which split after 1989, but they still work together. And my brother Scorpio, Bill Gates, Microsoft, all big tech, all corporations, institutions, both public and private, have to work together for us to implement the DRT, the debt fusion theory, which includes, integrates in it the MIT monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union back in the 90s by the Germany, Italy, France, Belgium, many other countries. They destroyed their national central banks. Anybody about finance that I go up and down these stairs 300 times for $300 Canadian. So of course it is the financial matters where we are, of course, in the constituency, of course, of appellating now and being involved in all the manners where we are now, all the situational aspects, of course, to be here and in the domain that the DRT has to be implemented and integrated. So we're going to have to implement it and integrate it, of course, across the domains where we are, in the name, of course, of now the domains where we have to implement it, both Canada and the United States, and it can be extended because we are faced with four main problems. So keep in mind that my DRT, the debt fusion theory, includes and integrates in it the MIT, the monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union. So it was implemented in the European Union. That's what one has to be aware of. The MIT, the Europeans destroyed their national central banks and their all currencies, and they created a common currency, the euro. And of course, the European Central Bank serves as a multinational central bank. It's a multi. They don't have national central banks anymore in many countries in Europe, like Bank of Canada, Bank of China, Bank of Israel, Banco de Mexico, right? these countries now have in Europe a multinational central bank which issues a common currency. They destroyed in the 90s, long ago, more than 25 years ago, they destroyed their old national currencies and they created the euro and the ECB, the European Central Bank. Right? So my DRT theory integrates in it that theory. So because we have four main problems which affect the majority of the population at this moment in time, in whatever order you place them, one being the cost of living, the growing cost of living in the past 3.5 years, the price of bacon, cheese, eggs, even coffee, even my wafers, a lot of prices of milk even are increasing and continually so. Every day I see prices increasing. The growing cost of increasing the cost of living, and of course with that the growing cost of living is the cost of rents. The rents are increasing. Even my rent of course increased between $6 and $10. I'm not going to divulge by how much exactly. 6 minimum and 10 maximum, so you could say either or in between 6 and 10. For me, I cannot complain because it is within the ranges of allowed, and it's even less than a percentage that was maximum allowed here by regulations and municipal regulations and rules throughout the island of Montreal and Quebec of the regulations that it was allowed. So the growing cost of rents, the growing cost of living, the stagnation of the salaries, the salaries are stagnated. The salaries are stagnated. The salaries are stagnated. And of course, the stagnation of the salaries is, of course, a big problem. I'm just going to check out this beautiful yellow flower there. And that's what we're going to be doing with that. And that's what we're going to get that rock and roll, of course, in the influence, of course, of all the congregational aspects where we are now to be, in all the domain names where we are, of course, to get it in the constituencies that, of course, the growing cost of living and, of course, the credit card debts, somebody now is swiping. So being that now somebody's swiping, I like this kind of sparkles, eh? So the growing cost of debts, cost of living is something, of course, which is intermittently in all the civilizational aspects where we are now in the domain, and in all the plurality of the domain where we are now interdictions, and of course we have to be in all the communicational aspects where we are now to be in all the domain names and all, of course, the consequential operations where we are in the dictums. And we have, of course, to get, of course, on that sovereignty, of course, to communicate, of course, all the manners which we are now in the intermittent, of course, of all. And of course, all that is the quite polluting there. I was gonna sneeze, that's why I was trying to move away. There's too much gas for my aspiness. So that is, of course, the appellation where we are now, of course, into intermittently, of course, in the manner where we are concomitant about, and concomitant where we are now to be in the domain name where we do and where we have to implement this theory because of those four main problems. Well, for the four main problems. And although I'm smiling because I'm joyous, these problems are affecting me as well. The growing debt. Even now somebody's swiping that credit card. Somebody's swiping that credit card. So basically, even now from Canada to the United States, somebody's swiping that credit card. And because they're swiping that credit card, they're getting more in debt. And maybe they're getting more in debt. Maybe they're getting even more in debt, you know. Even now, so with all the indebtedness. So those four main problems affect the majority of the citizens of both Canada and the United States. Growing cost of living, cost of rent, stagnation of the salaries, that's why we see more and more strikes, and the growing debt crisis, the growing debt. And that is, of course, something which, of course, we have to appellate and, of course, subjugate. We have to implement. We have to implement my DRT theory. There's no way around it. We're on the verge of a public financial collapse, because you see even the biggest cuts in Canadian history, in the public, have been announced a few months ago. Already cuts in the public sector have started the passport. So now I'm going to explain. We're going to take all the public and the private debt together. My $10,000, your $10,000, their $10,000, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're going to convert all the Canadian public private debt into US dollars. And because we implemented binational, we're going to add it with the US dollars. So that money is going to be new money circulation for a new central bank, the Imperial Republican Central Bank, which we're going to issue a new currency called the UE. U dot universal E dot exchange U dot UE. U dot universal E dot exchange U dot UE. The UE, the UE, the UE. U dot universal E dot exchange U dot UE. The universal exchange is going to have, of course, the value of the US dollar is going to have the value of the US dollar. The value of the US dollar. So that is what is going to have the value of the US dollar. We're going to build 44 mass tunnel structures. So now we're going to get rid of the border. We're going to get rid of the border. We're going to get rid of that border. We're going to get rid of it. Get rid of the border. We're going to create a massive Imperial complex for total SSD, aka the Draconis Imperial Integrated SSD Legion. We're going to fuse the RCMP and the FBI. We're going to fuse the FBI and the RCMP. We're going to get rid of the border. We're going to do a great census across Canada and the United States. We're going to mass finance healthcare, mass finance citizens to work out, train, exercise. We're going to create the nexus integrated, of course, total quality for total SSD, total security, total service, total defense. Of course, we're going to mass finance citizens to work out, train, exercise. We're going to, of course, build the golden hog down for total integration and defense across the skies in case of a thermonuclear war, and launch it to intercept ICBM rockets in case they're launched. We're going to, of course, finance the rehabilitation of the criminal population to build those 44 mass tunnel structures, tunnel city structures in case of a thermonuclear war, which, of course, we're going to appellate and institute. We're going to do it. So we're going to start building those 44 tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war. We're going to finance the building of those tunnels. We're going to mass finance this census. We're going to do a census. We're going to create the DGA with it, the Dancing Goddess Army, aka the Imperial Integrated Dancing, and we're going to constitute the Imperial Tourist Protocols. So we're going to mass finance tourism. So every equinox, of course, is going to be equinox or solstice, whatever the case may be, is going to be an equinox or solstice every 4 days every 3 months. So that's 4 times a year. Every equinox or solstice, where it's going to be the change, we're going to, of course, designate and, of course, accord 4 days. 4 days when the citizens are 16 and plus, we're going to accord 4 days for tourism. Of course, those 4 days that is going to be accorded for tourism is going to be something which, of course, we're going to be having, of course, in the appellation where we go. So those 4 days are going to be accorded to all citizens alike. We're going to accord 16 plus 1 has to be, and we're going to accord those 4 days every 3 months. That's every season: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter. That is what we're gonna do, and that is just what we're gonna have to be doing with that, and that is something where we're gonna get that rock and roll. So those 4 days can be used. It's 4 nights. We're gonna finance the transportation. We're gonna finance transportation, finance food, and finance lodging. Lodging, transportation, and food is gonna be part of the Imperial Tourism Ministry. We're gonna create 4 overarching: Ministry of Peace, Ministry of Love, Ministry of Citizenship, and Ministry of Ministries, to oversee the 3, I guess, in many ways: capacity, shame, and 4, and to run all these new institutions for total SSD and with joy, security, service, and defense. We're going to build a total integrated by the Draconis 911 protocols, integrated with all security services establishment, fuse the RCMP and the FBI, and of course we're going to get rid of the border, do a great census, accord certain amnesties and citizenships. If you have 44 convictions in the past 11 years, well, that's a problem, that's a problem. And I do my own community work and volunteering with it. We're going to build those 44 tunnels, and nobody's perfect. A lot of people deserve second, third chances, but if you have 44 convictions, then I guess we're going to go Dracula protocol rather than the Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Protocol, Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Protocol, which we're going to have to do. So the DRT is going to create the UE. The DRT, the Debt Refusion, is going to create the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit. That's what is going to be created. We're going to create it together, and we're going to of course, we're going to build this great Imperial structure for total SSD, total security, total service, total defense across the North American Collective. So we're going to get rid of the border, and we're going to, of course, fuse ourselves, our Imperial selves, of course, in these protocols, where we're going to fuse our institutions on coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're going to mass finance tourism activities. Tourism for wellness, for rejuvenation, 4 days. You can use the 4 days each season, or you can use 8 days when you accumulate them. After 6 months, after 9 months, you got 12. After you got 16. But you have to use them, because once you get to a certain amount, you can't use them all at once. So you have to use them. If you after like 3.5 years, 4 years, you're gonna lose them. So you use them, or you use them, or you lose them. So that's gonna be 16 plus. Every citizens, you can travel anywhere across the 63. The 10 provinces of Canada fused with the 50 states, and the 3 territories is going to be the Imperial Perpetual Union of the 63, 13 original we're going to add. Just like we're not going to annex, we're going to fuse. There's no annexation, there's a fusion, the North and the South, and the True North Strong and Free. We're going to add, of course, the True North Strong and Free with some liberty, and of course some joy with it. So the True North Strong and Free, of course, is going to be on the evaluation protocols, of course, what we're going to be doing with that, and that's what's something which we're going to have to be doing. So the Imperial protocols we're going to add ourselves, and that's what we're going to be doing through ourselves here, the Imperial Republic of the 63. Perpetual, let it arise and let it be established, and forever let it be. Pledge your legions to our family, support the DRT. It is the solution, or something similar to my debt refusion theory. The DRT, which includes the MIT monetary integration theory, is the solution. You can argue all you want, but fundamentally it is the solution, brothers and sisters. And with that, we're gonna get that rock and roll, and we're gonna get it on the road, and that's about where we are with that. Protocols, it has been a joy to work out, train, exercise, and working on training, exercising has been, is, and will be my medicine and therapy of choice. So that is the alignment.